Good evening. Welcome, everyone. This is the Marion City Council work session for Tuesday, October 18th. I think first up we have a presentation from Lydia Brown with Ryan Companies. You here? Oh, there she is. Welcome.
And I'm Susan Kling, and I'm here with several other library board members to present this update. I just want to say before we turn it over to Lydia that we're so excited about this mixed-use project that we think is going to be not only good for the library but for all of Marion. And we're thrilled to be working with Ryan Companies on this project, and also thrilled that Lydia's here to give us all an update. So thank you, Lydia.
Thank you. So I know that it may seem as though we've been talking about this for a long time, so I thought it might be worth just a moment to give a bit of history. In September of 2014, an RFI was released.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Please give us your name and your address. Thank you.
Sorry. My name is Lydia Brown, and I am with Ryan Companies. I live at 3513 Diamond Head Circle in Hiawatha.
Thank you.
I almost gave you my work address. I am there more than I'm at my home. But I thought it was really important as we came back around to talk about this project that we give a little bit of history. So in September of 2014, the City of Marion released an RFI asking for developers to consider a mixed-use space for the expansion of the current library. Ryan obviously responded, and we were awarded the contract in September of 2014. With OPN as our development partner. Ingbert Anderson is a library architect that was chosen in May of 2015. So if it feels like we've been talking about this for a long time, we have been talking about this for a long time. But I think a number of different things occurred. The first is the first project concept was presented with the idea of taking the current library, tearing it down, and building on that same spot. For a myriad of reasons, mainly because of the feedback that we received from the citizens of Marion, that idea was put aside, and it is our belief that perhaps that building can be repurposed for another use. So what we started doing was looking for property in Uptown. There is a commitment by the library board to stay in the Uptown area. So that started us on a property search. We have been working to get some property under control. Unfortunately, I can't tell you exactly where it is because we don't have those contracts finalized, but we believe that it's going to really allow us to do a number of different things. It will continue to be a mixed-use space with a library, some retail, and housing. It will allow us to bring market rate housing, so in other words, no subsidy housing into the Uptown area with approximately 80 apartments above the library. What I have up on the screen is actually a concept that has been given, and I'm going to try to make this a little bit bigger. What it is that's about a 45 to 40,000 square foot library footprint. And as you can see, it lays out all of the areas of the library. So the mixed-use project started with expansion of the library. And you'll notice in that layout, one of the things that the library board was very committed to was a very open floor plan that allows for it to really be utilized in whatever capacity that was necessary as the changing trends in library use continue. Libraries are not going away. We've had that conversation now for the past 2 years. We know that that's a proven fact. And what this allows us to do, however, is without putting a lot of walls in the library, it really allows us to have a very flexible space that will continue to be usable regardless of what the trends are going forward. And so there are a number of things that have been decided. This is the concept of the layout. There's a number of different concepts that are available. And it will allow us to really work around whatever the library's needs are in a current moment. The other thing I want to show you, if I can get my screen back. Well, technology is great until it doesn't work. So I'm going to show you here in a moment the actual concept for the mixed-use space itself. And because that's the other thing that I know a lot of people have been questioning. The current negotiations that are going on to purchase the property, we hope to have finalized within the next 30 days. The budget for the library is $12 million. That has been the budget from the beginning, and the design has been incorporated to ensure that that continues to be the budget. The other thing that, to remind people why mixed-use space was a favored option as opposed to a standalone, by creating that retail front on the top side of this, we will allow for the city to generate tax revenue as well as the revenue that comes from the apartments above. And so when the mixed-use space was created, it was not only to expand the library, but to create a revenue stream that would assist in paying for the upkeep and operational expenses of the library. There are a couple things that haven't been determined yet. I'm going to unplug and plug back in and see if we can get this other piece. My computer liked that better. So this is an example of a concept of the actual mixed-use space. So this is what the overall project will look like. Give it a second. Roland is telling me it's coming.
Pretty dark in the library, isn't it?
This is right. I'm not an IT person. Let me tell you a couple of other things. Some of the things that haven't been determined. We know that parking is going to be a challenge in Uptown. We're working on that in conjunction with a number of different. Oh, see there's the IT guy. I appreciate that. Everybody needs an IT guy or gal. Thank you. I didn't even know that was what I was put. There we go. Okay. That's the rendering of the overall concept. This being the library right here with access, the front being the retail, and obviously the apartments being above. Once again, these are concepts, these are renderings. This is not exactly what it's going to look like, but that gives you a pretty good sense of the type of project that we want to bring to Uptown Marion. We do have a couple of things that we are trying to determine. One is parking. Another is access for all citizens, making sure that we've got the right access for whether you are in a wheelchair or you need assistance, or for moms who have strollers, making sure that we have complete access for that. Things like book drop and drive-through and those kinds of things are still being developed, which is why this is still a concept as we determine exactly how the layout of the library is going to be. So we thought it was time to come back and start talking about this in real terms. We're still hoping that we can get a final design put together within the next couple of months. We're hoping to come back to the City Council before the end of the year and give you a bit more detail on exactly what the project would look like, very specific on square footage and those kinds of things that the project would entail. So I don't know if you have questions.
Any questions?
So the library concept is it would be on one floor, so there'd be no need for elevators or stairs or anything.
Correct. We really like the idea. We really think that having that open floor concept allows us to maximize space. You don't have to deal with a lot of the things that take up space that would not benefit the library, while still allowing it to be incredibly flexible from a space. So we really like the idea of the one story.
And so this face, I mean, it'll be like that, but that's facing the park. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not sure. This is just a concept.
But
this is just a concept.
You're looking at the entrance on the park side of.
We're not sure.
You're not sure. Okay.
Yeah.
And the 40 to 45,000 square feet, that's been, I assume, been determined to be adequate for a city of 40 or 50,000 people?
Well, if we were going to build it for the number of people that are expected to become in Marion, it would be significantly larger, which is why we think flexibility in the space is the more prudent way to go. We could certainly, I think that Ellsworth would tell you, he'd take 80,000 square feet and figure out something to do with it. But I think that being very cost conscious and making sure that we have programming space available for those areas that really are necessary for the library to be at full functionality, that's what this allows.
You might freshen everybody's memory to how big the current library is.
Thank you. The current library is about 24,000 square feet.
If you might remember back to some of the presentations that our former director did, the service population for the library is anywhere between about 70 and 100,000 because of the area that we draw from. But I think the idea behind the sizing of this one is that it was within the range of what was affordable, but there was a sense that if we continued to grow beyond that point, that was the point at which we were going to need to look probably at a branch somewhere out on the northern side of town, and that might be in the 15-year time horizon. And given the way that many communities are kind of growing that direction, that one could even potentially be a true multi-community branch up there as well. But this is, if you were to use just the standards for the square footage that libraries typically use, we would need to be somewhere in the 65 to 70,000 square feet to serve all of it. That just isn't practical, though, for trying to fit something of that scale in the uptown area or for the budget.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thanks for the update.
More to come.
Thank you. I hope from now on we kept up to date because we all get questions like all your library board members do. So it's really helpful to come forth and keep us up to date on what's going on.
And that is our plan. We have the building committee put back together from the library, and we are meeting on a very regular and consistent basis with the intention of coming back with progress as we go along.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, next we have a presentation from regarding Cedar Rapids Transit. Brad DeBrouwer, welcome.
Thank you.
Please state your name and your address, please, for the
Sure.
minutes. Thank
Brad DeBrouwer. I'm the transit manager for Cedar Rapids Transit. Address is 1710 K Avenue Northeast, Cedar Rapids. Grew up at 1800 27th Street, Marion. So if you want that information as well. But again, thank you for the opportunity to go ahead and do a presentation on Cedar Rapids Transit. And I'm going to focus, I'm going to start off and just kind of doing a broad overview. And then I'm going to focus more in on Marion, or the service level that we have in Marion itself. And so I will try to keep within my allotted time there for you, and so we'll go and get started. So our fixed route service, and that's what I want to focus on for the most part. We have 14 wheelchair accessible routes that provide service within the metro area, including Cedar Rapids, Hiawatha, and Marion. Our service starts 5:15 in the morning, and it runs till about 7 o'clock at night. The last bus is actually depart from the GTC in Cedar Rapids at 6:20, but they're all coming back in to be fueled up and put away after 7 o'clock. Saturdays, our service is a little bit more reduced. It's 7:55 to 5 p.m. Most of our routes are an hour long, and with our peak service on every half hour on our busiest routes, the exception to that are the routes that serve Marion, because they are tied into, and I'll get into that, they're tied into our First Avenue routes. So these are actually 90-minute routes, a round trip. And then all routes connect for passenger transfers at the Cedar Rapids Ground Transportation Center in downtown Cedar Rapids. Cedar Rapids Transit is part of the City of Cedar Rapids Development Services Department, and we report to the Assistant City Manager. We have an $11 million budget approximately, and we have 55 FTEs, of which the majority are you can see, are drivers. We also support other transit service within the metro area, and we have an ADA paratransit service, which is required. We have a $612,000 contract with Lynn County Lifts to provide that service, and it is an ADA requirement to have door-to-door paratransit service that complements the fixed route bus service. So that just means it's same service area, same days, same hours, and it's intended for individuals who cannot use the bus, not for those that choose not to, but for those who truly cannot use the fixed route service. Again, so we have a $612,000 contract with Linn County Lifts to do that. We also have a service that's after hours, and it's an optional service as opposed to the federal mandate for the ADA paratransit. We have a $408,000 contract with Horizons and NTS, and that service is provided for work, school, daycare, job training, life skills trips for when the fixed route bus service isn't operating. So it's pretty much after hours, but it also does serve some areas in which the fixed route service doesn't serve. Our overall ridership last year was just a little bit over 1.3 million passengers, and that equates to about 4,750 rides per weekday, about 3,000 rides per Saturday. And adults are the largest percentage of our ridership, and then disabled and elderly students, and then children as well. Our cash fares are $1.50 for adults, half fare for students, seniors, passengers with disabilities, Medicare passengers, and then we also have an income-based category that most systems do not. But we do have a qualification for income-based passengers to receive the half fare. Children age 5 and under ride for free. Day passes are good for all passengers, and that's for. We don't have a system that has transfers. It's a pay-as-you-go. If anyone's riding more than one bus, their best bet is to go ahead and get a day pass. That allows unlimited rides for all routes for the entire day. We also offer monthly passes as well. And right now we currently offer free Saturday service for all passengers. Just a comparison where we stand with other similar-sized cities in the Midwest. You can see that our Cedar Rapids is on the far right here on this one. Fares range from anywhere from $1 up to $2, and the pure average, I think, was $1.49. So we're right at that with $1.50. Our budget, the biggest portion of my budget for revenue is generated from Cedar Rapids property tax levy. Federal Transit Administration and state operating is the next biggest portion for my operating budget. Charges for services would be fares. Marion Hiawatha contribution is there as well, and then transfers in is my CIP fund. And expenditures for my operation, it's not, it's personnel costs is by far the largest percentage of the costs. My discretionary budget is primarily the lifts and NTS portions of our service. I also have obviously fleet and facility charges, non-discretionary is going to be fuel, insurance, et cetera. And transfers out in capital would be, again, for CIP purposes. Our transit fleet, so talking about CIP, we have 30 buses in our, heavy-duty buses in our fixed route fleet. 22 buses are needed during the peak hour service. New buses, we've purchased 22 new buses between 2009 and 2014, and we're really proud of that fact because prior to that, we were operating buses that were still 1978 vintage vehicles. And so we've really come a long way as far as getting our bus fleet up to a much more modern fleet. These buses that we've been purchasing are 32 seats. They got 2 wheelchair positions on each bus. They also are equipped with bike racks that handle 2 bikes. We still have a need to replace 8 buses that far exceed that 12-year, 500,000-mile useful life threshold. We have some 1990 model buses that are pushing 900,000 miles that we need to replace. And our goal going forward is to replace 2 buses per year on a 15-year cycle just to try to maintain an average age of less than 8 years then for the fleet. The Ground Transportation Center in downtown Cedar Rapids. It's located at 450 First Street Southeast. It was renovated after the 2008 flood, reopened in December 2013. If you haven't been there, it really is a nice facility, a huge improvement over what we had prior to the flood. Biggest thing from the operation standpoint, much safer. Our buses are not backing into traffic. All buses are able to pull into their bay and be able to go ahead and depart without having to back at all. They can go ahead and there's room to maneuver on the bus in front of them. Much better for passengers as well, both indoor seating, outdoor seating. Outdoor seating is covered as well. So a lot of options that the folks have as far as utilizing the facility down there. The bus garage itself was also replaced after the flood in 2008, and it opened in May of 2013. It provides our vehicle maintenance. It provides bus storage and a bus wash bay, and then our administrative offices as well. Bus stops are about probably over 1,000 bus stops within the metro area. All bus stops are posted with signs and are typically located about every 2 to 3 blocks along a bus route. Cedar Rapids maintains 72 passenger shelters, but there are additional shelters in Hiawatha, Marion, and Kirkwood that are in the system. And then a GPS mobile app. This last year, we were proud to announce that we are finally up to the smartphone technology, up to the smartphone era. Someone's looking for the bus. We now have an app that you can go ahead and download on your mobile device at ridecrt.com. It is live feed, 5-second updates, so you can really see the buses moving along as opposed to a Frogger where it's jumping, every 30 seconds or something. So the system is it's a nice tracking method. But you can go to the website itself or the smartphone. It's going to go ahead and select different routes. On this example, I have routes 1, 2, and 5B pulled up. You can see where the bus is, the direction it's going, and then the individual stops as well. The right side allows you to go ahead and download it for an Android or an iPhone app. And you can click on the details, and it can give you specific bus stops and the estimated arrival time for the next bus as well. And then if someone doesn't have a smartphone, it actually isn't a problem as long as your phone does have texting capabilities, because each bus stop has a unique number that can be texted to this 41411 number, and then it responds back within a few seconds as far as the next arrival times at the bus stop. Quarter MPO. You had a presentation a few weeks back from Andy Gomez from the Quarter MPO. So I want to touch base just briefly on that as well. That the Quarter MPO, it's responsible for long-range planning within the metro area. They conducted a study of the metro service to determine what is needed now and going forward in the future. And it recommended several route changes as well as funding considerations and further exploration of the creation of the Regional Transit Authority. So that's what had Andy coming forward to the Marion City Council as far as discussing that point. We do plan on making implementing several of the route and service changes that are in that study, and we're looking to probably implement those next summer. And then the Quarter MPO is going to continue further analysis of a potential Regional Transit Authority and going forward. So now we'll start to go into a little more closer look as far as what we have for Marion. We did a week's worth of trip data. Because this route is tied in with our busiest route, we can't give you a specific, you have so many passengers on, specifically in Marion. So that we can go ahead and do a much better idea to give you some idea of what your service is like. We did a week's worth of trip-by-trip ridership data. So we did 100% sampling for a week. Every trip, every passenger that got on and off the bus in Marion. And so we collected that, plotted those on the route map so we could have a visual overview as well as where ridership occurs. Again, this is both of these routes are extensions of our 5 routes coming up First Avenue to Lyndale, and then 2 of them come into Marion, and 1 of them goes west toward Hiawatha. Both those routes, 5 North and 5 South, have 9 weekday and 6 Saturday trips on each route, approximately 35 minutes, 10 miles of service within Marion. That results in approximately 3,041 hours per year and about 52,400 miles per year of service within Marion. That's about 4.7% of our actual total for the metro area. And there are approximately then 65,000 passenger trips that occur within, passenger boardings that occur within Marion on an annual basis. And those are what the 2 routes look like right now. The red route comes out of Lyndale Mall and it heads down 8th Avenue, up Central Avenue or Alburnett Road, Boyson, hits the Azure Apartments, down 10th Street over McGowan over to 31st, and then it's covered by the blue map, the blue line on this route map, but it goes out to Walmart and then comes back in on 7th Avenue and Marion Boulevard. Whereas the blue route, which is 5 South, it goes down to South 11th, hits the Apartments, Meadowview area, back up to 5th Avenue, and then it works its way out to the Walmart as well, and then comes back in on 7th Avenue, down through downtown again on Marion Boulevard. So those are the 2 existing routes. And a little more detail then on those. And I just threw this in just in case you want to see the schedule itself. That first 5 North starts at 5:15 in the morning, last trip at 5:20, and then 5 South, last trip is 6:15 in the morning. First trip is 6:15 in the morning, last trip 6:20, and so you have service within Marion from about 5:30 in the morning till about 7:15 at night. Route 5 North average 109 rides per weekday, and averages 86 rides on a Saturday. It's about 25% of the actual total ridership for 5 North. Average peak load is 20 passengers and with a maximum load of 24 passengers. So that gives us an idea of what size of bus we need out here for the passenger loads. Just as you build an interstate for its peak volumes, you build it for what's happening at 5 o'clock at night. You don't build it for 2 in the morning. Same thing here. We're putting buses out based on maximum peak ridership. And on this particular route, the biggest ride generator is at the Azure Apartments on Boyson Road. Only place that really didn't have much ridership was the Central Avenue Alburnett Road segment, but we're using that to get over to the Azure Apartments. And this is what the bubble map looks like. So First Avenue, you get the Marion portion. Anything that you see the orange or yellow dots or the light green circles is where ridership's occurring. And again, the Azure Apartments are the biggie as far as on that particular route. The Walmart service, along 7th Avenue as well. 5 South averages 116 rides per weekday, and 86 on Saturday as well. Again, 25% of what the total ridership is for that route. Average peak load on this one was 20 passengers with a maximum peak load of 36. So technically there were passengers that were actually standing on that particular trip for a 32-passenger seat on the bus. And again, the major generator of the apartments down the South 11th met a view on this one, but it's consistent ridership throughout that entire portion of the route in Marion. And then so there's your ridership map again, looking up the top portion there. You can see the pretty consistent as far as the green dots and the yellow dots through the Marion portion of the route. So some route revision considerations. Both routes have been revised throughout the years to serve development along Highway 151 east of 31st Street and with services far east of Walmart. Again, I actually grew up here in Marion. The bus stop was on 29th at the time, coming up McGowan Boulevard on 5 North and 29th Street. Pushed out to 31st, pushed out to 35th, the Hy-Vee had been developed, and then eventually we got out to the Walmart. But neither route right now can absorb additional service without negatively impacting the routes that are going First Avenue and the passenger connections to the other routes. So we're really kind of maxed out. We kind of stretched that route and that rubber band as far as we can without really having to do something differently with the routes. So to expand service east of Highway 13, and that's something that we've had a conversation with Lon about, is trying to go and serve the industrial area to the east of Highway 13, would result in having to make some sort of changes, some sort of trade-offs with the existing routes, or we create something new in Marion. And I'll talk a little bit more about that here at the very end. So we do have several options for consideration for Marion, or several options for transit service for your consideration. So our first one, obviously, is a no-change option. You just leave things as are. We've been doing it this way for many years. We do have ridership. That's obviously the least painful option as far as, but it doesn't provide any new service. So a second option would be a reroute of the two existing routes, similar to what is proposed in the transit study, and I'll show that in just a few minutes, or a few slides here. Another option would be to create a circulator route within Marion that connects to the rest of the fixed route system at Lindale Mall. An advantage of this one would be you can have service that's not tied into, hey, anything I do out in Marion is right now is affecting what happens on First Avenue, which is my busiest route. This would be an option that people could circulate within the city without having to go transfer. If they want to go and do some sort of a loop within Marion, I really think that's probably an option that I would hope that you give some consideration to here in the near future. Other option that you have would be you could contract with another provider. You could always go ahead and go with someone like Lynn County Lifts or Horizons to provide a separate service within Marion, or maybe a service that we provide a backbone service up and down the business 151, and then you have more of a demand response that could feed into that system. So that's an option that the city could consider. The city of Marion could also provide its own service, similar to what is done in Iowa City, Coralville, Davenport, Bettendorf, or a number of other similar-sized cities such as Marshalltown, Mason City, Clinton, Burlington, Ottumwa, Fort Dodge, Muscatine. I grabbed a bunch of the cities that are similar size to what Marion are for that example. And the last option would be somewhere down the road here is the potential of a regional transit authority, and obviously if that does come about, then there's an option for service there. So this is what a proposed revised route for option 2 would be. This is something I reviewed with Lon and Tom and Kesha as one potential. And this one would be where, again, that red route would be more of the backbone. This would be alternating routes like they are now. So same schedule as what we have for north and south now. But here we would actually get out farther to the police station. We go as far east as the police station, come back through the industrial area, the growing industrial park that you have, cross back over to Walmart, and then back in on Business 151. The trade-off is that north-south route that I have, it would really be going down to the south portion of the current route right now. We can only get about as far over as like 31st Street, and then we would have to start going north. But the option here does tie into the Lindmark campus, and we have the Azure Apartments with a stop that could be on their side of the street again, so those passengers aren't having to cross Boyson Road to catch the bus. So these are just two options, the ones that we think might be, if you want to go this route, that might be for your consideration. And then this one here is an example of a new circulator route. Don't focus on the yellow line. I was just showing the bus could go meander where the city of Marion wants it to go. There are other areas within the city that we can't currently serve based on the existing ridership or routes. We could meander. We could take the bus wherever Marion feels there's a need to it, and then it would be some type of a circulator route. So I want to go and touch base on a couple budget considerations as well. So a fully allocated cost analysis. A fully allocated cost analysis of the existing service showed that the city of Cedar Rapids had been subsidizing service in Marion by approximately $100,000 a year. The analysis takes into account the existing federal and state transit subsidies and passenger revenues credited towards the service in Marion. We do the same sort of thing with Hiawatha. Try to go ahead and give credit for the subsidies that we get, a proportional share of credit for the service. In that allocation, the service truly cost was about $461,000. Marion's payment in FY16 was $195,000. You see the FTA subsidy about $105,000. The state subsidy about $25,000, passenger fare credit about $34,000, and then Cedar Rapids subsidy about $100,000. The FY17-18 budgets, Marion committed an additional $50,000 in the current budget year, so a total of $245,000. The cost is about the same as far as the total budgeted service, but Marion's share went up to $245,000, and that dropped the Cedar Rapids subsidy down significantly. The state, federal, and passenger credits are good in place there. And then, where Marion's expected to eliminate the subsidy, hopefully in FY18, and we would be expected to cover additional costs for future service expansions as we go forward. And a new circulator route, just want to throw those out as well. The additional cost of the city of Marion for a new circulator route in FY18 would be approximately $162,000 more than currently budgeted in FY17. This assumes a 1-hour route, approximately 15-mile circulation within the city, approximately the same hours of service that we have as far as 5:30 in the morning till 7:30 on a weekday. Similar service that we have on Saturdays as far as so it's matched up with the rest of the service. But it does increase the number of hours and the number of miles within Marion. The additional cost for a new circulator route, again, would be about $162,000 more, so that's the $245,000 plus the $162,000. It would be about $407,000 if the city were to entertain that as an option. And this would approximately, based on this off of FY15, would add approximately 11.5 cents to the Marion's existing transit levy. So that could be off one. I don't know what that dollar amount was, but I'm just going off the FY15 numbers that I had available. So transit levy itself, cities in Iowa can levy taxes for operation and maintenance of a municipal transit service up to 95 cents. That's the state cap, 95 cents per 1,000 valuation. And that Marion's FY15 levy, and I'm going off FY15 because that's what I had comparisons to, was 15 cents, which provided $211,500 in funding, and that's approximately $14,100 per penny as far as what that raised. And then here's comparisons to other cities in Iowa for FY15. Cedar Rapids was at 81 cents. Iowa City's maxed out at 95. Coralville 71. Cedar Falls 25. Waterloo 61. Marshalltown 22. Clinton 69. Burlington 22. Dubuque 48. Council Bluffs 31, Port Dodge 43, Ottumwa 71, Muscatine 36, and in Bettendorf I couldn't find that they're actually doing a transit levy, but they do contribute almost $850,000 to the operation of their own system. Like I said, Davenport and Bettendorf run separate systems. So, summary: Marion, we believe, has a need for and would benefit from expanded transit service. Approximately 65,000 passenger trips per year occur within Marion. The transit routes and schedules have been relatively unchanged for many years. Again, we've inched them out a little bit farther to the east, but they've been relatively unchanged. There are several areas that would benefit from new routes or increased service frequency. Marion's transit levy is lower than most cities that have transit service within Iowa. The FY15 levy was 15 cents, and cities can go up to 95 cents per valuation for transit service. Several options available to Marion. We would like, the city to create or consider the creation of a new circulator route. We think it would provide many benefits to Marion and its passengers to have a separate route that stays out in Marion. And then the last thing I have is that we would like to continue discussions with the city regarding FY18 transit service levels, and obviously going forward as well into the future. So that's what I have. So thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead.
Obviously, we have more than one. I'm one who Lon has talked to you folks about, who takes issue with the shrouded buses. Okay. I know you make money from advertising, but our police department can't see what's going on inside of those buses. Okay. And I'm wondering, do you have some kind of and you very well may have, an emergency where the driver, if he does have an emergency in the bus, where he can call the police with one button without picking a radio up and going through all of that?
We don't have.
Is there such a system?
You could look into a system like that.
You could go to that if you did have an emergency on that bus, where the driver could silently call the police.
The other thing we can look at is not having wrapped buses out here, and not all of our buses are wrapped. Several of them are. Not all of them are. One of the things that we're actually doing an RFP right now for for advertising. One of the things that we also looking to do is maybe not having, when a bus is wrapped, not having the entire bus wrapped, more of what they call a Kong wrap, so it's more between the wheel wells, so you still would have windows that you can see into from the side. But right now, the way we route our buses, we put our newest buses on our heaviest ridership routes. So the Marion benefits from being tied into the 5 routes because our brand new buses are always going to be on those 5 routes that are coming in through there. Obviously, the ones that are out there on the busiest routes, the advertisers would like to go and see on those routes. But there's nothing that locks us into, again, if we did a circulator bus or something like that, we could very easily just have a non-wrap bus, kind of like the one you see in the picture there. So that wouldn't be an issue.
Well, passenger safety is a big item for you, I'm sure. And in today's world, there could be bad things going on in that.
All of our buses do have cameras both inside and out.
I wish you would look into some kind of a system where the PD would get a call silently and could respond by the GPS where that bus is. Thank you.
Randy?
I just had a couple of questions. Thank you, first of all, for coming forward to us. When we take a look at the routes, I would agree as well, too, that those routes are kind of stagnant, and it would be nice as our city's growing to expand to some of those other areas that there's some need to. But in your studies, do they show, I'm a little concerned about some of the outreaching that we're going to and the miles that are going to be traveled, and is there really a need for that? Do we have a need or a call to have these buses go clear out to the PD and make that loop out there? Is there a demand for it? Those are just questions that I'm just kind of seeing. I like the routes going to the north, but really right now, again, going back to the question, is there a demand for it? I see a lot of fuel and wear and tear on these buses for miles that are going to be traveled. That's really not necessary, but I'd like to hear your input on that.
Well, there is demand to go farther east, no question about that. And I think as your industrial park grows, it probably will continue to have that demand out there. But it's always, kind of a chicken and egg as far as if ridership if you put the bus out there, will people end up utilizing that more because now that service is accessible by transit. The routes that we're looking at, we were kind of hoping when we did that analysis that there'd be some very obvious, you don't need us for this area, needs more service, but it wasn't quite as clear cut as we had hoped. Like I said, you look at both the routes, even areas that might be somewhat lower than the Azure apartments, still consistent ridership, just not high ridership. One of the things that this transit study that the MPO did was, the consultant really focused in on put your resources where the ridership is going to be. More frequency on busier routes. That's why I wanted to float the idea that maybe it makes sense to do something that, something on the backbone, something on Business 151, and then you do something that feeds into that. There's always the question, how far is too far for someone to walk? Quarter mile is kind of the rule that we, the guideline that we utilize. I mean, some people will walk much further than that if they have no other choice, but for the choice rider, a person that has a choice, about a quarter mile is about what most people are willing to go ahead and go. But now that will increase if you have more frequency, because then they don't have to go and wait for 90 minutes for a bus. If a bus comes by every hour, or half hour, or 20 minutes, or 15 minutes, of course, that makes a big difference.
In your surveys that you're doing of the ridership, the ones that are boarding, what is the percentage of those that are moving about within the city limits and those that are actually transferring into Cedar Rapids for employment or other purposes? Do you know that?
I don't have an answer for you. We don't have that level of detail. What we have is the boardings where people get on and off, and that's what those bubble maps were showing, is that every time that someone gets on or off, they're counted there. Now, we will have better data. We actually, with one of the benefits of that Ride CRT app, is that we are actually adding what they call APCs, automated people counters, passenger counters. It's not going to replace what our drivers are counting at the fare box for the official counts, because we have to have those. But it will give us a geocoded a point of where people are passengers getting on or off. So that, I think we have one bus left to go ahead and do to complete with that. And so we're going to start having that data. So that's going to give us nice planning data to utilize, because we will have that information much more detailed.
Sure, perfect. Thank you. And again, thank you for coming.
How does the after-hours service work? I mean,
well, we provide that contract with the NTS to provide that service.
Does it cost the same, or?
No, they're $5 a ride, and they got to do a 24-hour advance reservation for them. And they have capacity constraints as well. We provide vehicles. We provide some vehicles for them, 2 smaller buses. They have several of their own 15-passenger vans that they utilize as well. But it was more of a kind of a stopgap, just a safety net for that after-hours service.
I mean, is there any statistics on the level of usership or ridership?
I don't have the numbers with me, but as far as our average ridership there, about 40 to 50,000 rides a year.
The after hours,
Mhm.
yeah, because that's a significant difference in cost to the user, and these, people are using the bus. A lot of times have financial constraints.
Sure.
Because that is one of the complaints that I've heard about. We have office hours at the library every Saturday, and I've had individuals come in and talk to me about that, about the bus service, and specifically the after hours, the cost of after hours service, and that it was costing them significantly more.
We have a sizable investment, $408,000, to help buy that cost down, but it is currently at $5 a ride, is what they're set at.
Yeah, I think there is a need, to expand the routes. I just had a question about the shelters, the stop. Do you have on a calendar of improving or adding covered shelters, bus stops?
We don't actually. City of Marion manages their shelters, Hiawatha manages theirs, Kirkwood Community College handles theirs. So that would be something that would be actually an internal decision as far as within the City of Marion, as far as adding more stops. Hiawatha's been pretty aggressive lately. They've added several of their own here the last few years, and that's something again that we haven't really. We take a step back because we think each community, it's in their right of way. It's something that they are maintaining, but we also think that each community can come up with their own design, their own standards, what they're going to end up utilizing for their shelters or stops in general.
Okay, thanks.
Cool.
So it seems like you're pushing the circular route there. That's the one that you favored.
And I'm pushing it, but I do want it to be something that you take into consideration.
But my question is, do those, I assume it'll still be two buses that make the circle?
That wouldn't. This would be, well, I guess it depends. That's all. What I was estimating would just be a circulator route with 2 driver shifts, 14 hours of service, plus the deadhead time travel to and from Cedar Rapids. So 2 8-hour shifts, continuous 1 hour. It could be shorter than that. It could be depending. Right now we're 40-minute routes. You could do a north end, go to Lindale, or where you want to have a transfer, and then do a south end. It would be very much open. The hours would be pretty much the same because we want to do it with 2 driver shifts, but the routing and the miles could really vary.
But so if the bus goes through Lindale, it doesn't go all the way downtown.
Under this proposal, it would not. A circulator, I think, we would have a transfer at Lindale, of course,
Okay.
Connections. If we were to do something like this with a circulator in Marion, we probably would do something real similar on the northeast side of Cedar Rapids into Hiawatha. So that mall would be a connection that people could go down First Avenue, or they could go ahead and catch the bus that would be going toward Hiawatha. We kind of see the Walmarts on both ends, kind of being the anchors, and then Lindale, and then doing loops from there. It really does. Marion's decision to go one way or the other really impacts how we will serve. Some of those changes that we'll be implementing in next summer.
Okay, thank you.
That my question kind of piggybacks off his. If you do a circular route with one bus, but you'd be hitting Azure and the 2 main spots, wouldn't that cause overcrowding on a bus?
Well, depends on the frequency. Yes, that's something that would have to be looked at. But the other thing we have to look into is our passengers coming up First Avenue, staying on Marion, riding all the way through Marion, and going back down to Cedar Rapids, because they catch the bus on their side of the First Avenue, or whatever. So there would definitely be some additional ridership, but again, that's where you have to take a look at. Do you need more frequency if we do something like that? Frequency is very important in transit. Frequency is the more often the bus comes by, obviously, the more likely it is that passengers are going to utilize it because it's convenient. And the best way to equate frequency for non-bus riders is like having a gate at the end of your garage or at the end of your driveway. So once an hour, it's not very frequent. You better catch it, otherwise you're going to have to wait another hour. So that gate's open every half hour. It's even better. Every 20 minutes, even better. Every 15. But that frequency has a cost, and that's the cost of an additional bus and additional driver and the labor costs with that. So, but I would say that we would still want to have a 35-foot full-size bus out in Marion if we go that route, as opposed to dropping down to a smaller vehicle. The cost of vehicle over the grand scheme of things, isn't going to make or break, the cost of the service. It's the labor cost.
Would a smaller one be beneficial on the route that goes out to Walmart and to the police station and back?
No, I would say just the opposite, actually. I would say if you were to do something, a combination, we would probably want to have the heavier line route the heavier bus on the linear.
On that?
And then you could do maybe a feeder route that might then be able to tie in at Marion Square or Walmart or something like that.
Other questions?
Well, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate the
Thank
opportunity.
you.
Like I said, we'll continue to work with Lon and your planning staff and see what we can come up with for FY18 and future.
Yeah, this was very helpful. Thank you. Finance.
Yeah, Your Honor, we got a resolution on the agenda to approve a change order increasing our contract with Tyler Technologies for $22,400. This would be for additional training that we need. Our initial contract provided for around 125 days of training of staff to get all the modules up and running. We've been using that for the last several months to get things going, but we still have a couple modules that we still need to implement, and so we're out of our 125 days basically. So we're asking council to increase that. If we pay for 20, they will donate 14 additional days. So the amount was set forth in the contract before. It's like $1,120 per day. So if we'll pay for 20, they would donate 14, and that should get us through what we need to get the software up and running totally.
Okay. Questions? Any discussion on that? No?
How many people do you think would go? Would everyone go back through this, Wes, or?
No, it's just a couple modules.
I mean, people-wise.
I mean, this is just to hire them to come back and sit in the classroom and instruct as many people as we need in that classroom.
So they're here doing the classes?
Right.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so then is the money budgeted somewhere, or?
For the enterprise software project, part of that is coming out of the reserves from the utilities because they're funding a couple of module portions for it, and then the remaining portion of it is anticipated to come out of the 2016 bond. I have a placeholder that I put in there because I didn't know at the beginning exactly what the final total would be, so we do have some flexibility with that.
This is the
I understand that.
This is the finance. Do they need that? they can do whatever they. I'm just kidding, Wes.
Yeah.
I get that evil eye.
Okay. Everyone good on that? All right, public service.
Thank you, Your Honor. Starting with number one, discussion regarding pedestrian signals on 7th Avenue and 19th Street. I was gone, I think when this got brought up, there was a citizen had a question about this. And we discussed this briefly a couple months back. And that's the location, 7th Avenue, 19th Street. And that's what they call a mid-block crossing. It's a tension wire crossing. I think it got put in there in 1997, if I remember correctly. And around May, it got hit. And essentially what happened, an oversized load came through, ripped the entire span wire down, damaged the controller, damaged all the heads, and with that also pulled in the poles. And so initially we thought the repair would be very simple. We thought maybe we could salvage what was there. We had engineering services come out, and they looked at the footings. The footings are very shallow there. And so, as you can see, the poles are tipped in now, and we are unable to get a span wire across that as of right now. So to do any repairs on that, we're going to pull the entire infrastructure out and start over again. so it's a very complicated repair. During that time, we've had discussions with the school district, as well as I talked to Lon about whether or not this is a necessary crosswalk. Whenever you put in pedestrian crossings, there's some warrants you got to look at, both pertain to pedestrian volume as well as school crossing. As of right now, and I'm not an engineer, as of right now, you're going to have a tough time meeting those warrants. For it to qualify as a school crossing, you need at least 20 school children crossing that intersection during the peak hour. With that, with a pedestrian crossing, it's not going to meet that. So I think from the council, we're going to need some direction whether or not you really want to repair this and put that type of money into this infrastructure. The insurance cost is not going to cover the entire repairs. We're going to be well short of that. So with that, we have been talking to the school district, and Kesha is going to come up here and speak more to the safe routes to school. This intersection is not designated or identified as a school crossing. So as of right now, it's kind of just out there.
But how is it used? It's not identified, but is it being used as a school crossing?
That, I mean, you probably should do a review on that to see how many children are using it. I do know with our maintenance personnel, it's used very infrequently. So I talked to some of the staff just yesterday whether or not we should identify this as a school crossing when they bring their safe routes to school proposal to you. It's not identified. So I guess we should probably either, if the council wanted to send this to a TAC review, you could, or you could simply direct staff to remove the poles if the council wanted to do that. So regardless, we can repair it, but in my opinion, it's not really justified in doing so. So if the council wanted to do an engineering review of it to see whether or not it's warranted, they could. But considering the fact that the pedestrian crossing is there basically for school children, it begs the question whether or not we should repair it. So, any questions on that?
Questions?
Yes. Ryan, what was our settlement from the insurance carrier on that? Do you know the dollar amount?
So the coverage I think we're going to receive is, with the span wire and the footings, you're upwards about $12,000. To finish the repairs, we're going to have to put new footings in, probably to redo the intersection, and I'm guessing $40,000 to $50,000 to do it right.
So the city received $12,000 from the insurance carrier? Okay, thank you. That's all you have.
Is there a better place to put that than?
That's something engineering should probably answer. I mean, yeah, I could see better places to put it. It's a mid-block crossing. Yeah, there's some safety issues there with people getting across, but it also should be justified having it there as well. So.
I was thinking, like by Phillips or something, up here where there's already a signal there.
Yeah.
But you've got a long span of, for anybody to cross 7th Ave, there was no stoplights or anything for a long way. So I can see why something would be needed for crossing 7th Ave there. I mean, now you're going to have the roundabout down further, but there's still a long gap between that stoplight and the roundabout. Yep. So if someone wants to safely cross 7th Ave, they're going to have to come here or go down to the roundabout.
I think that what you need to keep in mind, though, is once 6th Avenue is completed, all the traffic will go to 6th Avenue. And the intent is that 7th Avenue would become more pedestrian friendly, and we would probably put a lot of four-way stops down through there. So there would be a lot, in the final situation, there would be a lot of opportunities for pedestrians to cross 7th Avenue, and probably would not need signalized protection to do that. So if you're going to put something in there 3 years from now, it might be obsolete.
This is probably something we'll have to contract out to. It's not going to be an easy fix. There's very little right-of-way there to repair the footings. You can go up there and see that now. So there's some things to consider. Might be wise to send it to TAC for review. That way all of us can.
I think so, because I think we need to know more. I mean, yes, it could be obsolete in 3 years, but what about in the meantime?
Yeah, right.
And is it being used heavily, or who's using it, and is it needed? And, so
I know I've
is
stopped
there
there
an alternative solution in the interim?
Yep.
We probably all have been stopped by that thing over the last couple of years, and people use it, or did use it.
And just one additional clarification, the current design for the Central Corridor does call for a signalized intersection at 22nd Street. So between the 15th Street roundabout and the 26th or 27th roundabout at Marion Iron, where EIC used to be, 22nd will come up and connect to 6th Avenue, and there would be a signal at that intersection.
26th.
22nd.
22nd,
Yep.
and
22nd would be more towards Quality Auto.
so there'll be a signal on 22nd and 6th. Gotcha.
Just to clarify regarding the question regarding insurance, these poles, we've been fighting these poles for about 10 years. They've been gradually coming in like this. And so that last accident really did them in. It's to the point where we can't get the clearance of the span wire there. When we hired the structural engineer to come out, they said, there's no way we're signing off on that.
That's a tough spot, like you said.
Yep.
There's no room there. There's no room to move it to the corner because there's limited space there for turnability on that particular corner. It is really a tough situation right there. You have to tear it up and put it back. The timing's poor, but we can't control that. But agreed, we need to. Safety comes first, so obviously TAC will help us out with that.
It'd be good to do a review to get some facts regarding the use.
Exactly.
Because we all can estimate the use.
Yeah.
I got a pretty good idea, but I think it'd be good to get some factual numbers on.
I agree.
Whether or not it's used.
Okay. And especially to see what the future holds,
Exactly.
Where it's going to be.
Before we spend the money.
Right.
Right. So, yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? We'll put a motion on there to direct attack then, if the council concurs with that. So, and then item number 2, Your Honor. That's a recent, we just added that. That's a letter from the superintendent, Chris Steyer, with the Marion School District. This kind of pertains to pedestrian crossings too. This mid-block crossing, the same type of intersection. This is located at South 15th Street and A Avenue, close to the Marion School District. This is what they also call a span wire crossing. It's a very old crossing. I think we put that in 1982. The date on it. We've done some maintenance on it. But this is up for replacement, or has been up for replacement for a couple of years. Talking to the staff with the school district, they do not feel this is an appropriate place for a crossing. They would like to move the crossing, not necessarily the span wires, but at least get the crosswalk moved closer to the high school in Starry, which I personally agree with. But they're requesting to put a new crosswalk, a painted crosswalk for now, at that location between Starry and the high school. And depending on what direction we want to go with this, that's something we may want to knock out yet this year. They see it as a safety issue right now. I've talked to the police department. They also agree it's a safety issue. And so with that, if that's something you want to direct attack, or do you just want, it's up to you.
The painted crossing would probably be okay, but the signage that needs to go with it, I think, should probably be approved by TAC. So we're all supportive of it. I'm still a little concerned whether it'll actually be used or not. I've been down through there last couple weeks, and they're scattered all the way down through there where they cross. But if we can get them to enforce the crossing, it'd be
In talking to the school district staff, I think one day they went out there, they had about 70 children cross at that location. At the A Avenue, the existing location down on A Avenue, the South 15th, they had about 4. So that's what they indicated. We've seen that ourselves, our maintenance personnel. The A Avenue crossing is not getting used as much as.
So you would just be painting the crosswalk there? I mean, is there a crossing guard or something, or how?
Yeah, there would be a staff. They have
Okay.
already moved the crossing guard up there.
Okay.
That's where they would like the crossing at, and it does make sense.
Okay.
In terms of the signalization, we'd probably look at that later. Again, Kesha is going to come up with a Safe Routes to School program, and a lot of that's addressed through that plan.
Okay.
So for the time being, we'll probably look at getting that marked for them, and just moving it down there, and then look at the appropriate things we should confer to TAC and go from there.
So they still have a crossing guard at A Avenue. I drive that every morning, taking Sierra to
Believe
school. So
is the intent.
she's there every morning.
November 1st, they
Okay.
will be moving that.
She's moving up to.
this area.
Okay.
Yep.
The other thing I would be a little bit concerned with, and I'm supportive of it, don't get me wrong with that, but you can get into ADA compliance at this location and driving them to a driveway approach and so forth. I get fixing it temporarily, but we don't want to get in a situation where we have an ADA compliance issue and we have a signage issue. And I think it gets more complicated than that pretty fast, but we'll do whatever council wants us to do.
Yep.
So I'm just trying to understand the foot traffic. So it's the high schoolers coming in on the school grounds at 8 in the morning and exiting at dismissal?
Yeah, a lot of it's my understanding, it's a lot of the elementary school children crossing there.
Crossing to go to the
Yeah,
Star.
that's what they've had.
Okay.
Talking to the police department, they have had some issues there. There's been some accidents. So even the police department has requested for that to get moved. And so depending on where the council wants to go with this, that's something we would like to.
Is there concern with the crossing, so all the elementary kids walking up there to cross, and now they're going to have to cross the entrance to the high school, and if there's high school kids pulling in, do we have concern with that? Because down in A Avenue, it's signalized and person there to stop the four ways. So.
And I'll kind of address both those. With that, that's typically staffed, is my understanding, when there is school children crossing. They can speak to that more than I can. The thing on A Avenue, that's really not the appropriate place for a mid-block. Mid-block crossings are designed to go in mid-block. That's why they're called mid-block. Okay, when you put them on the corner, it's not always the safest place to have them. And so if you consult the MUTCD, moving back away from the intersection, having them up by the intersection is not the safest thing to do. So this has been debated for a long time, but the formal request has come in by the superintendent to do this.
So you're saying all those years my kids crossed at A Avenue was not safe?
I didn't say that.
I'm just kidding.
But there's some design standards that you take into account there.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, so what are you looking for from us?
I think if the council concurs, TAC's okay with it, we'll get some markings down, but then we'll come back and give a formal recommendation on this. Yeah.
Okay.
But Marion's looking for an actual signalized. The letter says signalize.
Not, I think.
Push button crosswalk.
Yeah. For right now, they're looking just for a painted crossing. Talking to them.
Location highlighted attachment. Okay, painted. Okay, you're right.
Yep.
Right. Sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Our favorite topic.
It did it, thank you. Okay. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Hello.
Honorable members of the council. Fire Chief Deb Crable. Last month, I gave a presentation about open fires being used in restaurants and bars, and you showed that you really want to promote this idea for the aesthetics and to bring restaurants and bars to the Marion area, the ambiance and things like that. So we actually met with all the Metro fire marshals in Hiawatha, Iowa City, Waterloo, and Cedar Rapids, and they all wanted to keep the code the same.
Consistent.
Consistent, yes. And I met with the Iowa fire chiefs, about 30 of them, and they too want to keep it consistent. So, and that is what everyone's using. I asked those fire chiefs, I said, we've got people that say that they see something that isn't to code in some restaurants, and they said they don't know how that happens. So that's where we are. So what I've done today is a picture is worth 1,000 words. So I've given some pictures of what is legal that they can use. Okay? So you can go from there. They can use heat-producing equipment, gas lights. They cannot use LP gas or a Class 1, Class 2 liquid, which is kind of a chemical combination that I won't get into. There are 8-ounce fuel canisters that they can use in some things. So that's all that the code will allow at this time. These are examples of heat-producing equipment that they could possibly use. These are gas lights, examples. The one on the bottom left, that'd be your left, that's the only one that's not enclosed. It's just an open flame, and that was the one in Cedar Rapids at the Black Sheep Restaurant and Bar. This is a gas light on the left with an open flame, and it's enclosed. And then we have other gas lights. So it's just natural gas, which is a very good, clean thing to be using, and that's why we promote it. Here are some things for patios. The only thing is the one on the right, it is recommended in the code, not recommended, it actually says you shouldn't be able to reach in and touch the ignition source, meaning so you won't get burned. So that would actually need probably glass like the one on the left around it to be safe. But I also included the costs, so you could see how much they do cost and would cost the restaurant or bar owner. So here's some other examples. Of course, with glass around it, we would recommend.
Those would be okay with glass around them?
Yes.
But they're not okay as they are?
No.
Okay. Just so we're clear.
A lot of these are used for private residences. That's why.
How high would the glass have to be on some?
Yeah. Here's some that are more commercial. The one on the left has the glass around it, and so does the one on the right. And you see the cost can go up.
Yeah.
These are water fire structures. And they usually use a waterfall, which is what I've seen a lot of in Kansas City, St. Louis area, Nashville. The water is actually around, so you can't reach into the fire, which they're really great.
Then you don't need glass in that situation?
No, as long as you don't have to reach in, no. Okay. Here's one that they put a bar around it, like a guardrail.
Mm-hmm. That works?
Yep. Well...
No?
We can talk about it. Actually, it's going to be up to you. So, the table down below there, that does have glass around it, so they can actually dine right at a table with an open flame. These are the ones we like to see. They're glassed in fireplaces. They produce more heat than the other smaller lighting fixtures I just showed you. So these are what we would prefer to have. So the recommended requirements from everyone around the state, the fire marshals, the chiefs, are what is in the code now. A permit would be required. It cannot be portable in nature, meaning you can't have a portable fire pit and then move it to the other side of the patio, or when you have different events. No, it has to be fixed. Natural gas is what we prefer they use, and they should use. Must be installed per the manufacturer's recommendations. And all of this was gone over with the building department in regards to the mechanical code, the fuel gas code, and they are in agreement with these also. Safe clearance from combustibles and shielding. So they can do it now if they just follow those guidelines. In summary, the present code provides options for safe installation. The question is, should the flame be protected or not protected? You can change that if you choose to. You are the council. You can make amendments to the code. It is the fire department's recommendation from a safety standard that they are protected, the flame.
So tell us what that means.
The glass.
That's the glass?
Without the glass, correct.
Okay, so,
Okay. Distance from combustibles, the code's not very clear on that. In different areas of the code, it says 10 feet. It'll say 5 feet. it'll say 3 feet. Residential code right now for open flame and cooking is 10 feet. That's for residential. For commercial then, if you look at that, it'll have 5 feet for portable devices. Remember, we aren't using portable. Exactly. So there's a lot of conflict in the code, but 3 feet for heating devices. So what we would recommend is the 3 feet for sure with the glass. Okay.
That sounds doable.
Unless it is up to the council to amend the code. So here are some options, things that I think you need to decide. Would you like to see more restrictive regulations or increased safety with what I gave you? Would you like not to see the glass? That's up to you. Less restrictions? Where do you think the current balance is appropriate? And I did give you the costs also. What they were talking about using at the bar in question was a portable unit. And that's why it was less costly. It cost about $800. So I showed you prices of some that were $300 all the way up to $6,000.
So it's possible to do it within the current code.
Yes.
And still have the same effect and atmosphere that you're trying to create.
Yes.
And it can be affordable and within the rules.
Yep.
So,
sounds good. Here's my report.
Well, it sounds like the code needs to be changed some, or because you're saying no portables, but yet it says you have for 5 feet for a portable.
Residential, yeah.
That was just residential?
No, that was commercial. I know, it's complicated.
So it needs to be, it needs to be cleaned up.
But for the people that keep saying that they can't have fire pits in Marion, can we put all this in a one sheet?
Yes, we will.
Here's what you can do, and here's what's allowed.
We sure will.
Within the code.
Yes.
So that we can hand it to them and say, yes, you can do it.
We'll make brochures for the permit itself. So then all they need to do is they'll have all the guidelines if they want to get a permit to put an open flame in their patio or.
They just have to comply with the rules.
Yes.
I have a question about now those heaters that you bring out.
Yes.
Those are portable though, right?
Yes, those are portable, but you can't use propane, and a lot of them are propane. They have the propane 20-pound tank inside the base. Those they can't use, but they have those with natural gas. Those they can use.
So then they would
That makes sense.
And they can be portable.
Those tall, they're acceptable.
Okay.
Then they would be permanent.
Yeah, and because it's not an open flame, that's why.
Yeah.
Open flame portable is not accepted yet.
Wouldn't the glass that you're enclosing around that flame, wouldn't the glass be hot as well?
Yes.
So what's the difference? I like the ones with the water because then you can put your sleeve out when it catches on fire.
That's right.
But, the glass is going to be hot.
Yes.
Maybe not quite as hot as the
flame would be worse.
Not quite as hot.
Yeah, okay.
Chief, to clarify, is glass the only acceptable screening material? That one that you showed that had the guardrail around the outside, it almost looked like it had a grate around the flame in the interior as well.
It probably did, yeah. That would be fine.
Okay.
A grate around it, so that you just can't reach in and touch the flame.
Right.
That's what we want to
Like
prevent.
with the water, so you could just dip it in there and put it out.
So I got confused when Kim asked. So the portable, the tall heaters.
Those aren't an open flame, so yes,
they're
they're
not
acceptable.
An open flame, so they're okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I think that clears it up.
Good.
So when we keep hearing that Marion's rules don't allow fire pits, we can
Mayor,
say yes,
can I ask
it
a
does
question?
allow it. Yes.
From a use perspective in zoning and such, we don't have anything that specifies whether in what district you can have this. And I'm not asking for that to be something. I'm assuming that if you have a restaurant or a bar and this is an accessory use, we're just calling that fine. But we do get the question now and again, and most people that I talk to have referenced butcher block.
Yes.
And so
They removed their glass.
But if the glass was there, it would have been fine. Is that
Yes.
okay? I just wanted to clarify. Sorry, I could ask you privately.
Yes,
That's
it
the
is.
only one that I've been around, but I get questions about that one.
Cedar Rapids permitted that.
Okay.
But it had glass that somebody took
Yeah, you
off.
can see where it was
It's been
broke.
But the important thing is that all the cities have the same rules.
Yes.
It's not easier to do it somewhere else than it is here.
Yep.
It's just,
We
yeah.
just made sure.
People may not be following the rules, but.
Chief Crable, I've got a question. What will we be doing to enforcing these? There's a restaurant, I just drove up 7th Avenue last night, and they have the 3 towers with the flames appear to be portable. They are now on the patio, burning nice and bright.
Are those on the brick pillars?
No. These were
Then-
portables in the center of a wooden deck.
Oh, then we know nothing of that.
So what once we make a decision on this, then we will be able to?
Yes.
Okay.
And even if you don't make a decision, we will be looking into that.
Okay, and that's exactly the reason I'm headed to that point is we need to get a handle on what we're accepting and not accepting so that these can be enforced. They're starting to pop up. If we
Yes.
don't nip those right away, I think we're gonna have a issue here, so.
I agree.
That would be, under current code, that is not allowed, what
No.
you just said. Okay. So that can be reported and
Yes.
you'll go take a look.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably right after the meeting.
Thanks, Chief. That was very helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike?
Yep. Each year, at the end of the pool season, we prepare an annual report. There's a copy of that in the council packet this week. I've asked Carlene to come this afternoon and just do a brief overview of the season with the council this afternoon, and that way, if there's any questions, we've got Carlene here to answer those this afternoon. So go ahead, Carlene.
Good afternoon. I just want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to come forward and give you a quick overview, like Mike said, which you did have in your council packet. Just to clarify, the pool season goes Memorial Day through Labor Day. That is something the park board came up with last year to have exact set start date, end date, so we weren't always back and forth. When school starts, when school gets out, how do we adjust that? So those are some set in stone dates that we have. First and foremost, before I go over any of the totals that we've gone through in the numbers, in our aquatics field, we always say that it's a great year no matter what your numbers are, as long as you didn't have any major injuries, drowning, or drowning with death. So once we go back through and look at our numbers, just remember we had a great year in the end for those things. A quick look at our attendance. We had a little over 27,000 people that came through the pool. That's a 10% decrease from the 2015 season. However, if I look over the last 4-year average, it's actually about a 4% decrease. A couple of things that I know for the reason that that took place, one of the local daycares used to bring their sites to the pool 3 times a week. This last year, they cut it back to twice a week. So right there, that's almost 1,800 swimmers that did not come through. So we know right there that that was a major part of that decrease. With the decrease of our attendance, we also saw a decrease, obviously, in our pool pass sales. Family passes decreased approximately 4%, and individual passes 9%. Looking at that, we also know that there was another local daycare that contacted us when they were getting ready for swim lesson registration, stating that yes, they would still be using our pool for lessons. However, they would no longer be bringing their daycare, which they came twice a week to the pool, that they were going to be going to the neighboring city of Cedar Rapids and taking their children there. So that's also another 600 to 700 swimmers. So we know right there that's where part of our decrease went. When you look at our averages, daily admission compared to pool passes, it's almost close to that 50%, whether they're paying up front with the pool pass or coming in daily. A couple things that we have done to kind of help with our attendance and bring people to the pool. We added a family swim night. We've had that on Sundays, and we added it to Wednesdays. What that is we allow families to come in. They pay a $12 fee to come in and use that pool. Sundays, it's from 4 until 7, and Wednesday nights, it's 4 till 8. It allows those families that are a little bit constrained for funding and income to be able to come and use the pool. We get a great response on that. A lot of families say this allows them to come in. We had 90 participants or families use that in 2015, and we had 127 this year. So that is something that we will continue to do. We also offer $2 day admissions. We do that one Sunday a month. Just allows, again, another opportunity for those that are financially unable to attend. A couple special events. This year we did a back-to-school night. And in 2015, we did a summer safety week, joined with the police and fire. We will look at expanding on those two events and then also offering some other events in 2017 just to try and bring people back to the pool. Our swimming lessons continue to be popular. However, we did see a slight decrease. A couple of those reasons, we do know that Central City Daycare no longer is bringing one of their sites down for swimming lessons, so we knew right off the top that we were going to be losing them. And then also with Linmar's indoor facility, they are now offering lessons in the summer, so they took some of ours, and then also their PE classes they're offering for one grade level a session throughout the school year. Some things we did, we added a 3-year-old beginner class. And then we are also going to be, for the 2017 season, looking at adding a beginner level for those kids that are ages like 10 to 13. They've never had this swimming experience. Their parents want them now to take lessons, but they don't feel comfortable doing a beginner with 4 and 5-year-olds, which is typically what the age is for our swimming lessons when they start with level 1. Our swim team numbers continue to be low. A lot of that is due to that Linmar program. A lot of these kids want to know that swimming is a big part of their life, and they want to be competitive with the swim team as they get older. So they're going to go ahead and do the program that's going to take them right into the school. Our league is recreational and fun. We had a lot of positive comments, just that the kids had a great time. They enjoy it. The parents even complimented that even though the kids had to be to practice by 6:45 in the morning, they really didn't complain because they were having such a great time. And some other users that we do have outside of our normal hours, the Milky Way Master Swim Club. They come in 3 days a week, and they're usually typically in there by 4:30 a.m. And then the CRAA, which is a youth aquatics group, and they come in on Thursdays. So they have an MOU with our department and come in that time. For staffing, I had a staff of 69. Of that 69, 32 of them are lifeguards. This year we had 9 brand new guards, very first time, 4 returning second-year guards, and then the remainder was veteran staff. We also had 14 swim aides, which just helped with swimming lessons. We have our cashiers and managers. A great number of our staff can also do many different positions, whether it's lifeguarding and teaching lessons or lifeguarding and having WSI, which is water safety instructor, extra certification. They may teach lessons, cashier. Every single one of them has a janitorial duty because at the end of the night, we are responsible for the maintenance of the pool, so it's the bathrooms. So not only are the kids learning how to be lifeguards, but they're also learning how to clean the bathrooms, so their moms appreciate us for that. We also are trying to stay very proactive. We do weekly trainings with the lifeguards. In the past, we've brought in the fire department, we've brought in police just to work on rescues, safety training, things like that. So those are some things, usually every other year we're bringing them in, so we'll be looking at with those departments again. Also, our park maintenance staff, couldn't do it without them. They're our preseason maintenance, they're our winterizing. They're there to help me with the minor repairs that we have. They're there to pick up the trash in the parks, mow, keep the parking lots, everything going good. So I couldn't do it without them. The other departments that I work closely with, police, fire, throughout the season, their support is great and amazing. Also our water department, they help us out. They actually just finished a repair valve project for us. We paid for the materials, but they took the labor. So we have a great working relationship with them, which helps. Just to keep in mind, our facility's 30-year-old traditional 50-meter lap pool. It has that 25-meter jet out, 6 lanes. We have the diving well with the 2 boards, and then up above we have our smaller training pool, which goes from 2 to 3 foot deep, and then our baby pool, which is a foot deep. For a 30-year-old pool, it's actually in pretty good shape. So a positive note, this last season we did not have any days of shutdown due to any maintenance issues. Some of you, if you remember, a couple years ago, we had some broken pipes and we missed a week, or we had a broken pump and motor. So with the council support over the last couple of years, we've been able to do some updates, added some amenities, which has helped with that not being shut down. We replaced all the piping and pumps in the filter room. Last season, we replaced the pool heater to a high efficiency. Had a lot of great compliments on that, so it brings people back for that. We've expanded our fencing on the east end to allow some more grassy area. We've added lounge chairs, the sunshades, which you guys supported. Lots of great compliments on that, especially with everyone and their sun safety issues now. So once again, I just want to thank you for your support on these improvements, which has helped preserve the life of our pool. Some questions to ask. Where are our swimmers going? They're going to Cedar Rapids that did a complete rebuild of their facilities within the last 10 years. They're willing to travel to those other communities that have those family aquatic centers, Cedar Falls, Manchester, Anamosa. They'll go to Lost Island. What are we going to do? We're going to continue to offer those special events, theme days, to draw that attendance. We're going to keep it a safe place for families to come to. We're going to continue to provide that friendly staff that makes everyone feel welcome and want to come back. They have that warm feeling when they come. We're going to continue to look at cost-saving measures to try and help on the backside of with our expenses. Those are some things we're going to be looking at. Looking into the future, we just completed our master parks plan, which you guys adopted in the spring, which identified that our pool has a life expectancy of an additional 10 to 15 years. Within that plan, it did call out for a new aquatic facility. They did look at our existing facility. Could we rebuild, do something on that footprint? After they looked at it, kind of drew it out, they realized that our property would expand all the way up to those amenities would go right to the property line of all of our neighbors. There'd be no buffer anymore, no additional parking. It's just not feasible to place it in that area. Where are we going to go with this information? We're going to identify starting that process. That process could take anywhere from 5 to 8 years to come up with a facility if that's what we decide to do. We're going to look at establishing an aquatic committee within the next year. Do we need to look, is there community support? Do we need to look at that pool feasibility study? If so, that's something we're going to be coming back to you for budgeting purposes. Land acquisition, where is that going to go? Those are some things that we are going to be looking into. There are a lot of questions to be asked and answered, but these are the things that we're going to be looking at for the future of the Marion Pool to try and bring our citizens back to our facilities so they're not traveling out. So once again, I just want to thank you guys for your support in helping us with these projects. And any questions?
Thank you. Questions?
What would the cost of a new aquatic center be?
Millions and it just depends how far you're going to expand to. I think in the plan, Mike, was it like 12?
Yeah, if we were going, based on the master plan estimates, to do something, a new aquatic center, we're looking at something around 18,000 square foot. That would come in around that $12 million figure.
Silence.
And in comparison to that, though, within the master plan, too, we looked at what it would be. Carlene touched on retrofitting the pool and what that would do. That would come in somewhere around the $5 million mark, just to do that upgrade to get to that aquatic center status, if you will. To do zero entry with the existing pool, something like that, we're in that $2 million range just to do that add on to it. Again, though you're using existing infrastructure, so you're still working with, by that time, infrastructure that's going to be upwards of 40 years old. So.
Yeah.
We better enhance Indian Creek.
Other questions?
I was just going to say, I was looking at the staff page, and you've got your own department just for that. I mean, she's probably got more people doing that than Mike has in the whole Parks Department. So well done managing all that.
A lot of people there, yeah.
And just keep in mind, they're mostly teenagers.
Right.
So if you had 2 teenagers at home, imagine I've got 60.
Yeah.
Because maybe 9 of them are a little older. So.
Well, good job on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carlene.
Thank you.
Okay. Building inspection. Are you building inspection?
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Jumping ahead to planning. And I'm taking the fast track. I have actually number 13 and number 14 that I'd like to discuss. I have another meeting to get to after this. So What I want to discuss, first of all, is, sorry, good evening, Council. What I'd like to discuss first is number 13, is the Blackford de-annexation request. This was received and filed by Council in September. Staff was able to review this, kind of have internal discussions, and then meet with Mr. Blackford a couple weeks ago, maybe last week. Anyway, have a sit-down conversation with him, realize some of his concerns, and basically his concerns were related to, he'd received a letter asking him to do rental inspections. I think he has 3 residential units on the original farmstead up on this 40-acre parcel. And so naturally within the city limits we'd want those rentals. And he was paying about $90-some every 2 months for stormwater utility fees, again tied back to the original farmstead. That only covers the impervious surface, so driveways, the residential structures, and then a lot of farm buildings. And so those being the only things that we would have to give and take, or that was kind of the crux of his wanting to do that. I explained to him that looking at the map, what you have is you have the city boundary over into here, and what you have is if you took away these 3 properties that he's wanting. Originally, I thought his request was only this 40-acre parcel, but in the meeting he said no, he meant to include all of their property that they have within the city. And I said, if you take that away, what you've got is you've got about a 400 or 500-foot connection that leaves this city property in with this city jurisdiction. Staff was not supportive of that, let alone I wasn't sure if the state would even support that de-annexation request. And even further kind of going against the de-annexation of this property is we've got water and sewer on the maps that I included. We have water and sewer adjacent to 2 of the properties right along Lucor Road. Not that he has any indication that he wants to sell, wants to develop. It's just kind of the opposite. However, when you've got developable ground right adjacent to water and sewer, it's again staff's recommendation not to de-annex that. Even if he wanted to annex this in the future, saying he agreed to any further annexation, putting that before the city development board, even if it's 5 years down the road, they may remember this and wonder why the process if we only go through annexation at a later date. So all of this is kind of explained in the memo. Again, staff is not necessarily supporting the de-annexation. It's ultimately up to the council to proceed with that. But our recommendation is to not do anything. Any questions of staff on this?
Questions?
There are dwellings there?
On this property?
Yeah.
He has 3.
Yeah. He indicated that there were 3. I don't know if they're all 3 separate buildings. I think that there's at least 2 separate buildings. I don't know if he's kind of subbed out to one of them. But he indicated that there were 3.
Would it be possible to waive this? I mean, if he's complaining about the stormwater, waive that for the farm part, not for the home. But
and the thing is, it's only based on the impervious surface. And so it is only literally applying to the original farmstead that was the farm buildings that create just as much, they shed the water just like the house would.
Yeah, so that's what I was thinking. If it went to the other 2 properties, I could see waiving it. But if it's for the house, no. I mean,
we couldn't discount.
No.
It's a utility.
Right.
I doubt that we can waive it.
No.
And staff would probably not be supportive of that either, as it might set a precedent, and then you've got every Tom, Dick, and Harry wanting their fees waived as well. We indicated that if he did have some older farm buildings, he could take those down and request that his numbers be revised. That's always an option as well if he's not using them.
Yeah.
Do you know what the county is taxing? I mean, are they assessing that based on the farm, or is it homes, or what? How are they assessed for that?
It's at an ag rate. I believe the houses are taxed, the residential structures in the city are taxed at a little bit higher rate. So I don't believe that he's saving money on this property. On the other 2 properties, ag ground is cheaper.
Yeah.
for taxes in the city.
So he's already doing everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Consider that all one piece of property for stormwater?
No, just this property, and it's only like Steve Cooper in the engineering department has literally all of the outlines of all of the buildings that calculates his stormwater fee. He's not charged on the entire property. He's only charged on the outlines of the roofs of the buildings and the outline of the driveway.
Yeah, that's why I asked Paul if he was.
Yeah. See what you mean?
I don't see any compelling reason to support de-annexation. I mean, it's right up against development. The only reason would be to avoid city requirements. You know, I don't think that's compelling enough.
And that's what I indicated to him, and I told him that staff would not necessarily be supportive of de-annexation nor waiving any of the fees that everyone else in Marion's required to. So. Okay. Moving on to.
If I could, when you spoke to them, it's on the agenda for receive and file.
Mm-hmm.
If it's just reported back that the council chose not to, or do we need to add a resolution and have it denied? That's a question for everyone.
Or motion taking no action on.
So, I don't know what you met with him, Kesha. Would that be the action we'd want for Thursday then? So why don't we put it? We'll put it on and then for a resolution. So there's at least resolve to his request. Sometimes that happens when we go back and say, well, it wasn't supported and there's no action. So this would be a good way to do that.
You need to acknowledge it.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, moving on to number 14. I'm not necessarily going to get into the detail that Ryan was getting into as exact locations or what we'd want at crosswalks. I just want to give kind of a higher level view of what I've been working on cooperatively with Marion Independent.
Number 13?
14. 13 was the de-annexation, wasn't it?
No.
Oh, okay, 13. I have an old agenda, apparently. So the Safe Routes to School update, just want to give a brief update. Snippets of this is also included in your monthly report in the planning section. Started back in January. This is off the heels of the blue zones. How do we make our schools safer to walk to, encourage walking and biking for students? And this is only the Marion Independent School District because it's the smallest geographical district, I think, in the state of Iowa. That ideally you start with the small, easy, low-hanging fruit. How do we get students from point A to point B quickly and safely? And so obviously the school was more than on board to do this. So it's been myself, Corridor MPO staff, Marion Independent staff, Sarah Menser with Blue Zones, and members of the Lynn County Public Health have been kind of sitting in on meetings going through these. So far since January, we've developed goals, kind of looking where do we want this plan to go. We've developed and distributed a survey to all the students and parents in the Marion Independent School District. What problems do you see with getting to school? So those will be a useful tool when we go through to actually draft the full plan. Looking at the 5 E's that you have of education, encouragement, engineering, enforcement, and evaluation. Those are the things that we're incorporating with the plan. So it's more than just engineering of having crosswalks, having speed reduction. Is it tables? Is it bump outs? Is it roundabouts? Is it signals? Whatever comes to mind. That's part of the engineering. Another thing is how do we encourage kids? What policies or educational components can the school put in? How can we encourage kids to walk and bike to school safely? And then right now we've been discussing part of that engineering, part of those right-of-way improvements. So we've been meeting with engineering staff and public service staff to talk about what they'd feel comfortable with recommending in the plan, or their insights if they're not comfortable with something, why, what are alternatives to those of what happens directly around the schools. What can we do to intersection improvements? How can we reroute traffic to make it safer for kids coming into and leaving school? And so basically the next steps, we'll be drafting the plan. You'll be getting drafts of that to review, comment on. So will staff, so will the school board. They'll have chance to have public input, and then ultimately we would want adoption by the school board and the city council of the plan. It would be similar to comprehensive plan. It doesn't necessarily tie to specific funding. It doesn't necessarily put anything in our budget immediately, but it does make that understanding that the school and the city would ultimately need to look towards how do we make these improvements a reality. Any questions of staff? Okay.
None?
Thank you much.
Thanks. Lon, was someone going to talk about item E1, or are we skipping that? It's starred.
The receive and file a letter, Tom, on the fence.
It's under building inspection, but I just...
Yeah, I don't think that they were ready to make any comments on that
Okay.
yet. It was just a receive and file at this point.
Okay, it was starred, so I just want... We'll unstar it.
The first item, we've had a lot of conversation over the last few meetings regarding the central corridor and some of the parceling out of the property where the roundabout is. We're setting the date for a public hearing. Item G2 is just essentially setting the date for a public hearing regarding the sale of Plat of Survey 2052, 2091, and 2053. These plats of surveys were all kind of outlined in the development agreement with Genesis for redevelopment of the Marion Iron property. So the consideration would be for $1, consistent with the agreement. This essentially is part of the trade between the right-of-way for the roundabout, which is highlighted in yellow here, for adjacent parcels. So I didn't include the agreement, but the agreement's it's about 20 pages long, I think. So if there's questions on that, I can certainly answer them. But at this point, we're just holding the public hearing. Once we have the abstracts created and there's been time for the title opinions to be reviewed by the buyer, then we will bring them back for the purchase agreements to be approved and continue on with the sale. So at this point, we're just holding the public hearing now. Any questions on that?
Questions on that?
The next item, as I spoke at the last meeting, we'd be talking about the Central Corridor Interim Development Overlay. And I'm going to pass this out. As was discussed, there's a desire by staff, and I think the council was supported directing us to proceed with the development of an ordinance to kind of take into account development within the central corridor until such time we have an overall development plan for the entire corridor. As you know, you've directed us to proceed with a contract for services related to an actual land use and zoning plan for the corridor. Stanley Consultants and OPN Architects is who we've been engaged and are pursuing a contract with. But in the interim, we've had a couple projects come forward, and I think there's been some surprise to the council maybe in what those projects were, what they entailed, and what they consisted of. And in all honesty, if there weren't incentives involved, they would be moving forward without any review by the city council or planning commission in many cases. The zoning within the corridor currently consists of C1, C2, C3, and C4 uses. I know that doesn't mean much when I say it to you, but the C4 is a warehouse commercial district. and would provide for any number of distribution and light manufacturing uses. Anything on the north side of Fifth Avenue consistent with that is a permitted use, which means you could continue to operate, establish new businesses of that nature. Our zoning ordinance, specifically along 7th Avenue, is still very much consistent with a highway commercial type use list. And we're in the process of updating those districts at this point. But there are a number of uses that I don't know that the council would like to see developed if we're in the process of studying what we want that area to actually be like. We anticipate 6 months, so this isn't a long-term overlay, but it just provides an opportunity within the next 6 months for any project that's going to develop in that corridor come forward for review and approval. Try and get this all on one page. I gave you really what we're talking about is extending from 1st Street to 31st Street and essentially 5th to 8th, and then we bump up to 9th a little bit in the uptown area and between the two proposed roundabouts. There's 2 sub-districts, so that's called the Central Corridor Interim Development Overlay. There's 2 sub-districts, the blue area being Uptown Marion, the Main Street District, and the red area would be the Commercial Historic District. So that's a historic district we have within the city currently. Essentially what the ordinance is saying is that any development in these areas, any redevelopment of buildings would need to come before the Planning Commission and City Council before permits are issued for redevelopment in any of the areas. In the blue area, there would be a review by the Main Street Design Committee for consistency with design standards that they have established. And right now, the design standards are a policy document. And then the area which is the red, which is the historic business district, there would need to be just a review of the project. This isn't like a formal hearing by any means, just an opportunity for the Historic Preservation Commission or their designee to take a look at the project to determine if it's going to do any harm to that district. So let's say someone came up and bought one of the uptown buildings and was going to paint it some wild color and put some kind of bright sign on the front of it. Well, currently we have no review authority over that. But if that's in our historic district, I think we want to make sure that that does not isn't contrary to the district designation, and we would be able to preserve that. So the review process is put in place for that. It's a 6-month period. It's renewable, but my hope would be we would come back with a longer range zoning and land use plan for the area, and that would take the place of the interim development ordinance. So there would be additional review processes throughout this. One thing I would say, much of the property south of 7th and north of 5th, between about 15th and 31st, is that C4 warehouse commercial, I'd venture to guess more light industrial used property. What this would do is essentially say that those uses can continue to exist. They become nonconformities for the period of the interim ordinance. If someone wanted to go into a building, let's say a fabricator of metal decides that they're going to sell it to somebody else, and the business, we're not saying that that business can't continue to operate, or you can't build, or you can't reinvest in the building. It's just that they're going to be considered a legal nonconforming use, and they can't build new buildings or expand the uses beyond the footprint that they are now, at least in the interim while this ordinance is in place. So it is limiting. I don't want to lead you astray that that is the case. But the idea of doing this is that while we have a planning study going on, that there's not a feeling that, well, if I ever want to expand my operation, I'm going to do it now, and then the city's kind of stuck in an area where we invest a lot of money into a corridor where we're trying to make it more commercially developed, and all of a sudden you got a number of industrial uses trying to expand ahead of the regulations coming. So that's the concept. It's a 6-month period of time. We would limit the uses to primarily professional office, retail, commercial, and professional services within the entire area. So if your property, and there are properties zoned C4, I1, they would be limited to the uses as a C3, C2, and C, or I'm sorry, the C2 and the C1 until the overlay is completed. I know I'm giving you this now. There's a public hearing on Thursday. If the council is not comfortable with it, by all means, we can continue the hearing to the next meeting. If you have questions, please continue the hearing to the next meeting. The ordinance does not have to go on the agenda for approval if there's some desire to read through it. I know I'm giving this to you at a late hour and fully would expect that. But I would ask that you take some time, take a look at it. I know some of it without context to the zoning code is difficult. If there's more information you want in the interim, please just reach out to me and I can do what I can to kind of help you understand
what is the status on the overall plan?
I'm in conversations with Stanley and OPN right now to revise the scope of work. We originally had a much broader scope of work. I think at this point we're going to narrow that to get it back on track.
I mean, we're not going to have to renew this, right? I mean, this really is temporary.
Yes.
And yes, we're working really, really hard to get the final plan in place.
This is a priority, as is purchasing all the property in the corridor, but we're trying to do what we can to expedite it, that's for sure.
Any questions for Tom on this?
Thank you for the work you put into it, Tom, because I know it's a lot of work and we've been asking for this, so.
Yeah,
kudos. We got to do something.
Yeah, I think just putting something in place to get the review approval here. I'm not going to tell you that this is perfect, and there may be situations that we come to where we may have some struggles, but understanding that, I mean, the study is important to the future development of the corridor. We've got huge development interest right now in that corridor. The last thing we want is a major project or something to come along that could harm the future development of the property. So.
Right. Wouldn't hurt anything to table this until we've had a couple of weeks to look at it.
Yeah, so on Thursday, the public hearing for the ordinance has been scheduled. So we can open the public hearing, or we're obligated to open the public hearing. If there's a desire to continue it, which by all means understand, I would ask that the council would continue that. And if that's just in general consensus, I won't even put the ordinance on the agenda to be read. We'll just leave it off and hold the public hearing, and then at the meeting, ask that you'd continue that. Does that make sense then?
Is that what you're all comfortable with, or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think put it off till we can read it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yep. Number 8 is a resolution approving Aspen Ridge Estates final plat memorandum. I think the council got a pretty good packet on that. This is the commercial piece of property north of Tower Terrace, east of Iris Drive. This is the final plat. Give me a second and I'll show you a picture of it. So Tower Terrace Road, Irish Drive, the red area. All the public improvements associated with the project have been complete. There's a detention basin in this vicinity. There's one north as well. This provides the opportunity for the property to be transferred. So it's just a final plat. There's no development project being proposed at this time. The owner is just wanting to get in a position for final platting. Pretty straightforward.
Who owns that lot?
It's owned currently by Integrity Homes.
Integrity.
Yeah, and if the council will recall, this has got the zoning out on Tower Terrace Road that requires that projects come back for review. So we're final platting it. At this point, I think he has a buyer. When it sells and the project comes forward, you will see that project. So, and I think that's what you guys wanted out there. So. Number 15, I did not get the information to the council, so we're gonna remove the discussion regarding the zoning district classifications. I may actually just send that out via email so you get some time before the next meeting to review it. It would be a substantial bit of information. So I'm going to be bringing some of that forward through to the Planning Commission at the meeting, at their November meeting. And so I just wanted to get some of that information to the council ahead of time so there's some basis for what we're talking about in future meetings, since it is a substantial amount of information. As we start the discussions on the zoning code is, we don't have the municipal code out, but it's about 1/3 of the city code. So it's a substantial document, 200 plus pages. So that's why I bring it forward. We can discuss it and probably just have little bits and pieces here and there. I won't read it to you. That's
Could you simplify that and just give us a drawing of what they're wanting to do out there?
On which one?
On that one, 15.
Oh, these are the use district regulations of the municipal code. So what's allowed in what district?
He's talking 14.
Okay, oh, you're 14.
His numbers are
Gotcha.
ours, apparently.
We said 15 when he started.
I think his numbers don't correspond to ours.
Yeah.
We have 14 for what you're talking about.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah.
That's not your fault.
What's wrong? Item numbers. The resolution regarding McGrath Auto Shop. How's that? Or
Good.
Auto Group.
Good.
The encroachment from the monument sign in the public right-of-way at 657 or 675 Blair's Ferry Road. There was a detailed staff report on this. Many years ago, there was a resolution approving a sign in the right-of-way. There's a desire and a dealership change, and there's a desire to continue with a sign in the right-of-way in a little different location with something different on the sign, but there's a desire to continue. We've reviewed it. There is a substantial amount of right-of-way there, and I think after review, it's in a better location than the existing sign, and it would make some sense to provide for that. It's worth noting, I think, and there's been agreements in the past regarding the use of the public right-of-way there. You can see the right-of-way line is substantially back, so we're providing through agreement the use of some of that property. And the sign location is proposed with the red where the blue was identified previously.
Do we have any control what they can put on a sign, Tom?
I'm sorry?
Do we have any control of what can be put on a sign?
On the sign or the site? I'm sorry.
I have a selfish reason to ask.
Okay.
I'm the only one up there with a Volkswagen.
It's difficult to control.
I would like to see it say Marion Volkswagen and not Cedar Rapids Volkswagen. They do a really good job of advertising their Cadillacs in beautiful city of Hiawatha, and I'd like to see them do the same about Marion. And I wish you'd relay that to them, please, and tell them that came from a Volkswagen owner whose car isn't being rebought, although it is a diesel.
I'll make note of that.
Thank you.
Any questions on that?
Hadn't been in the past, haven't the signs been shorter than this? As far as, what's going through the uptown and,
well, the sign will have to meet the requirements of the current district standard, so it should.
Haven't they been under like 10 feet or so? This thing looks like it's 15 or so feet high.
Give me 1 second here. I'll have to.
I'm thinking like Ziagiano's and all those, those signs are short.
Correct. Our current code allows them to go to 12 feet, 15 feet if they're on 5 acres or more. That's what I was.
Oh, okay.
So they have to meet the standard, and I don't have the parameters for this sign.
Okay. But it's.
Yeah, but we are striving to ensure that the signage is lower than traditionally was permitted along the corridor.
Right.
And monument in nature. If you notice, the sign does not have a skinny pole and then it's wider. It's the same width up and down.
It's not a flashing sign on the cart.
Not flashing.
It's pretty neat to have a new car dealer in Marion to go along with our
It is.
used car, you know. Have Volkswagen come back home, that's good.
On the last item under planning, setting the public hearing, I'm not going to read through all of it, but that item, we had a situation at the Planning Commission meeting where there was not a recommendation provided on 2 items, actually. So those items need to be sent back to the Planning Commission for review, since there was no recommendation made. After legal review, that's what they need to do.
So 16 or?
Correct, yep. So the public hearing on the zoning out off Highway 13 will be removed from the agenda.
Removed.
Yep.
Okay.
That's why we don't see the RV ordinance on here?
That is correct.
Gotcha.
That public hearing was scheduled to be two meetings out as well. So we've decided to move that from the next meeting to the following, but they did not make a, Councilman Brandt was at the meeting, and they did not make a recommendation on that either. We had just had quorum, so there was a little hiccup in the due process, I think, at the Planning Commission meeting, which we're going to address at the next meeting.
So is it still going to be, okay, November 3rd is still going to be a public hearing for that or not?
No.
No.
Nope.
Okay.
So we'll have to go back to the Planning and Zoning Commission for their second meeting in Tuesday, or second Tuesday of the month, which I don't know the date right offhand. But after that, we'll bring it to the council for setting the date for the public hearing. So it's going to push both of those items probably 3 weeks each.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Come on.
Yeah, item number 1, we will not actually hold the public hearing on the sale of this property on Thursday. While the council did pass a resolution to set that, the actual notice did not hit the papers, so the public has not had constructive notice for us to be able to hold that hearing. I do want to, though, go through some of the parameters of that purchase agreement after further conversations with Mr. Anderson about what he intends to do with that property. As the council would recall, and going back to kind of the history of how we arrived at this point, Mr. Anderson had been looking around Marion for several years to try to find a property that would allow him to not only build his new shop, but also to have some room to expand. He'd basically built out his former site on Chandler Court as much as he could and wasn't able to expand anymore in that location. And he was actually looking at 4 acres of the piece of ground, the 10-acre piece off of 44th Street that we ultimately bought. So he was looking at that, and we kind of got in the middle of that transaction and precluded him from being able to buy those 4 acres. So when we received the fiber right property back, we divided that property up into several different lots. He bought the lot on the corner, which was a 2-acre parcel, and then had always indicated an interest in wanting to buy the other 2-acre parcel immediately to the west of where he has built his current shop. We sold the first piece. He's got his new shop built, and he's up and running in that new location, and then we started to move forward with the sale on the second piece. At that point, I started getting some feedback from council members about what's going to happen there, when is it going to happen. I think there was some concern about whether or not that property was being purchased, just for speculation. And so we added an item or a piece to the purchase agreement that would allow the city to go in and automatically repurchase the property after 3 years if a project hadn't taken place. Mr. Anderson is asking that that piece of the purchase agreement be taken out based on his plans for the site. He's got some concerns that what that commits him to do is to expand his facility when he can't predict what's going to happen with his business. The example he used is that he has one customer that accounts for a fairly large percentage of his business. If they go out or they start using a different shop, then he's not going to need to expand on his original time schedule. His intent with buying that, while he has been working with some other businesses for doing a build-to-suit on the site, he wants to make sure that he doesn't get into the same situation that he ended up with over on Chandler Court, where he's landlocked and has no ability to expand. So I just wanted the council to be aware of that. He is here in the audience. If you've got questions about the project that he's talking about there. The one user I know that he's been talking to would take approximately an acre of the site, which would leave another acre down there that he would be able to build on. When we laid out that property with the platting process, we did make sure that it had enough frontage and that that would be able to meet the acreage requirements to be able to be subdivided down a little bit further in the eventuality that something like that were to happen. But I would anticipate that unless some members of the council strongly object, that we would make a change to that purchase agreement to remove that provision to be able to move forward with the sale of the property. So, questions, concerns? I said Mr. Anderson is here.
I'd be in favor of that. I mean, there isn't that restriction on anything else, on anybody that buys anything. Why should the city restrict them? Seems fair to me.
My question is what we're planning across the road, would anything we're planning across that affect that lot, or would we need that land for anything?
Immediately across the road from it is actually on the corner. Schwann's owns a 5-acre parcel on that corner before you get down to our piece. So it's not immediately across the road from us.
Okay.
And then Klingler Paint is across the road from it, too.
Wait.
Sir, if you're going to address the council, please come to the microphone. Thank you.
Okay.
Klingler Paint is immediately across the road.
Okay, so it's not immediately across.
Yeah. There's a whole row of lots down 3rd Avenue between our property and what...
This is behind his other...
And 3rd Ave.
Isn't this behind your other building, kind of? Well, kind of in a...
It's west of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I just didn't want it to impact what, Ryan's looking at doing. Good.
Your Honor, I'm going to address here. I've been taking a lot of phone calls on this particular topic. In general, and to summarize it, the citizens that have come to me about this feels they're asking the question, what is our obligation to Mr. Anderson on this? Lon, you've just laid this out to us. But in fairness to the people, I said I would bring it up. We feel, I think we're sitting here saying we got a piece of property. We're moving it to a public hearing to make the transaction. Are there other people involved with it? Is it a public sale? I don't know quite how to answer that with these folks, and I think there's some strong opinions out there as to why we're holding up a piece of valuable property to this particular individual with loose strings attached to it. So I just want to, I guess I'm going to throw that out there. I'm getting those phone calls, and I don't know what to tell them. So, I know there was negotiations in the past. Do we feel that the city owes this to the prospective buyer? I think those are things that need to be addressed.
Well, I would say, there were actually 2 businesses that we got in the middle of that were looking at those parcels down on 44th Street. Not only did we have Mr. Anderson, but then there was also Apple Creek Kennels. Right. Apple Creek Kennels was looking at the piece to the north of Mr. Anderson's property, but they have decided to put their project on hold. I think it's fairly safe to say, though, that if Mr. Anderson had felt that he was not going to be able to buy those 2 acres to the west of his property, he probably wouldn't have bought where he was, because he'd be back in the same situation that he was over on Chandler Court and not being able to have room to expand.
My question then is, why didn't he buy them at the same time? Why didn't he ask for the...
I was told by the city administrator not to. You can ask him.
It was just in looking at the way the pieces were going to be parceled together and they were going to be parceled out, it made more sense to...
I've had the money in place for 5 months to buy the property. I was told to hold off by the city. In order to address the council, Jim Anderson, 3600 35th Street Court. I'll give you the whole history. Lon's correct. I was supposed to buy that land, and then the city got in the middle of it and shoved me out of the picture. And in order to make it right, he then offered me to purchase the same amount of land of the fiber right property. The city council has already passed a resolution of intent to sell me these 2 parcels. You've already approved it months and months ago. Okay. I came to the council and said, this is what I want. I want the first 2 acres to build on. I want the second 2 acres to expand into, so 10 years down the road I'm not in the same boat, because it's expensive to rebuild and move. Okay, so I've based all of my planning and all my development to this point on the expectation that I'm buying the next 2 acres. Okay? The 2 intentions I have is to expand into it or potentially help. There's one other automotive business in town that's currently leasing that I do business with that wants to have their own facility. And I've said, hey, if you can afford it, I'll sell you one of the acres I'm buying for exactly what I'm paying for it. I'm not going to make a penny on it to help him out and grow. Okay? I've already got that in negotiations with him if he can come up with it. But I can't base a commitment of 3 years development on the fact that if he can or can't afford it. I don't know what he can or can't afford until he talks to his bank in a year or a year and a half when his lease is up. I don't know. The point I'm trying to make is it's a little frustrating for me to have an agreement with the city that's been in place for over 5 months now, and then on September 22nd, less than 30 days from when we're supposed to close, City Council wants to change the rules and throw this in there. This got thrown in on September 22nd. This 3-year development thing has not been in the agreement until September 22nd. After I've spent almost $700,000 developing my property, and I've spent even more than I planned on spending because I knew that, well, I can expand whenever business warrants it or I can afford it. I've spent an extra $153,000 on that parcel, putting in things like extra trees, better drainage, a pond for water. I mean, I ate up half of what was left putting in the pond to make it look nice, to make the area look good. Had I known I wasn't going to get that land, I sure as heck wouldn't put a pond in. You know, I've invested a ton of money to make it look nice and be a good member of the community. And then all of a sudden, you know, it just seems to me that the reason, to answer your question, the reason why the city's holding it out is because you've agreed to. You passed a resolution of intent to sell me both parcels. Okay?
Did it include both parcels? I don't believe it did.
I probably, well,
Well,
I'd
the
have to
second
look
part,
back
here,
and see,
part of the reason why it hasn't been, and I'll fill you in, I'll give you all the information why it's taken so long, if you'd like. I've been asking Lon, and I'm sure he'll back it up, for 4 months now. When do you want me to when do you want the check? Well, that was checked. We're changing things. You're looking at this. You're looking at other possibilities. I said, okay, fine. I can wait whenever you're ready. So I did everything that I said I would do. I bought the land. I've invested. I built it. I built it in a very timely fashion because that was the city was saying, well, how soon are you going to build? We broke ground July 8th, moved in September 5th. I received final occupancy 2 weeks after that, which means I've satisfied all the city's departments. I did everything I said I was going to do. Okay? And then on September 22nd, you want to change the wording of the contract. So I've agreed in the times, the reason why it's taking so long is I've agreed to 4 separate revisions and reconfigurations at the city's request of this second parcel. All either to allow it to be laid out in the city's best interest or to accommodate other buyers to allow and encourage more immediate development. Again, in the city's best interest. Lana's come to me 4 different times and asked to reshape the lot. Hey, Jim, can we move it here? Well, why? And he told me, well, it makes it better, you know, breaks it up better so the city can sell it. Okay, I can work with you. And then, well, now we want to shape it this way. Okay, as long as it's still 2 acres, I'm fine with it. And then he wanted to make it narrower. Okay, as long as it helps you guys and makes sense, fine. Well, now the people that built the storage garages, he called me the last time, well, can you give up some of your street frontage and we'll make it even narrower so that they could, because they want to develop soon. I said, okay. I mean, I've been accommodating the city, and that's why I haven't bought it, because you guys keep changing you guys kept moving the lot line around. You know, I was trying to have Tammy from Heritage Bank here to confirm. I've had the money in place for 4 months plus, just waiting when you want the check. That's why I haven't bought it. You guys won't take the check. And now, when it's supposed to close, again, like with the first lot, now it didn't get published right, or something was wrong with the public hearing. Now we got to wait again. That happened on my first lot, and that's frustrating as well. So, I guess my point is, I came to you and told you exactly what I was going to do, and I've done exactly that. And now in the 11th hour, you guys are changing your end of the deal. It just ain't right.
I don't recall that the city council ever approved selling you a second lot, sir.
It's in a resolution of intent, which I was explained to me by Lon, is that's the first step, and that basically gives me first right of refusal on the property, is exactly the words he used. And that's what the resolution intent was to do. And that was passed by the city council, I believe, in February,
We can look.
February, March.
So just to clarify for me, your expansion of your business, and it's irrelevant as to what you want, your intent is. From my perspective, I'd like to know when you say expansion of your business, are you expanding your business? Are you planning to resell it for development? Are you what is your intent?
Like I said, I may need to grow.
Your existing business?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if I
so
pick
give
up,
me
if
a
I pick up another
hypothetical.
fleet,
What would you build on it?
What's that?
Give me a hypothetical. What would you build on it?
It all depends. If I pick up, like I explained to Lon, if all of a sudden I pick up two new large fleet accounts as big as my largest one now,
so you need it
I
for
would
parking.
have to build more of a fleet type building.
Okay.
And that would be sooner. And trust me, I'd love to have to build on that thing in 6 months, man. I'd be tickled pink.
Sure.
But I can't predict that. And if it ends up being needed to be developed because of independent residential type customers, or your average independent owners, well, that's going to take a longer time, and you build an entirely different facility for that. So I don't know which way I'd build. I have to wait for business to grow and dictate. At first I may just need more parking. I asked Lon about buying 60 feet to the north of me too, just in case I need to add parking. And he said the city didn't want to do that because they want a plan in the works. Okay, I understand. I get that. I said, okay. I was okay with that. But now you want to slip that into this agreement now. It's like, well, and yeah, the purchase, the sale of the lot, what you guys said you wanted for it, which I did not negotiate. I said, okay. I didn't. It was all proposed by the city manager. Here's the land. Here's how much we want for it. I said, okay. And then he passed the resolution of intent for both lots. And I've been waiting to close on the city.
To get back to your point, though, Randy, about why this was originally split into 2 lots, at the time, like I said, we also had Apple Creek Kennels who was looking, and we didn't know, because their building plans weren't set, what the best lot configuration was going to be. And at the same time, then we were getting approached by the property owner to the west with Chad Pelly's group about wanting to acquire the additional property. So Jim is right. We did move the lot lines around several different times. At the same time, if we'd been trying to do that and hadn't done the corner lot, and tried to do it all as one piece, he wouldn't have been able to proceed. And he was needing to get moving so that he would have the opportunity to move out of his existing building. It could have, it could have been a 4 acres all in the corner and gone to the north. It could have been 2 acres over to the west, which was ultimately what it ended up being. But we did move those lots around quite a bit based on the desires of the other businesses that at the time were involved, and based on some feedback from the planning department about how best it would lay out for future use. But the intent was always to make sure that he would have room to expand with his business so that he didn't get caught like he was over on the other site. There would be room there. It could be broken up and it could be sold to another user. The price, Mr. Anderson is one of, and the Apple Creek Kennels was the other one, were the two that, because we got into the middle of their transaction, did not have to go through our listing agreement with the other parcels that are out there. So we have realtors involved on the other pieces, but that also means then that we're not paying real estate commissions or those other fees associated with it. Hence, the purchase price is a little bit less because we don't have those other expenses that we would incur associated with this. So that's why it was constructed the way that it is. Jim had iterated the concern to me about the restriction on having it in there for 3 years. I wanted to bring that back to the council and make sure. The feedback that I was getting is that there was concern that he was looking at buying it for speculation. That's different than buying it for future expansion of your own properties. Even if you look at for example, at some of the things that have been done out at the MEC, Legacy Manufacturing has enough space. They bought 1 lot that gives them enough room for their next 2 expansions. L-Plast can double the size of their building on their current site that they bought from Medco Holding Company. So that's not an unprecedented thing for us to do. The reason for dividing it into the 2 lots originally was so that we could sell one so that he could proceed while we figured out the boundaries for the other piece. Otherwise, he would have been delayed until the second piece went back through the platting process, and we didn't want to do that.
It was done to accommodate the city, and I had no problems doing that. But my reassurance from Lon was, I said, okay, well, I don't want to lose out on that other 2 acres. He said, no problem. The city council will pass a resolution of intent, and you've got first right of refusal based on all of our agreements to this point. And I said, okay. So that was basically how I was told, you're not going to lose out on it, and everything's as we agreed. You just got to wait for us to finish getting our ducks in a row. In the meantime, here, you can get started. Okay, I'm cool with that. But now, all of a sudden, on September 22nd, less than 20 days before close, we want to rewrite the purchase agreement. It's not good business.
What is that currently zoned for out there? Is that
Industrial.
It's I-2.
two? Okay.
And that's the only reason why I have issue with that is, I can't see the future. Trust me, I'd love to have to build on that in 6 months, a year. That'd be great. It means business is booming. But I can't predict the future any more than you can.
These are situations that are very difficult as a city. We appreciate your business and we appreciate you moving into town. This is one of the problems with the city owning property because of these types of situations that come up. We're obviously concerned about what's going on, particular sites, the tax base that we're missing out on. Could it sit there for 3 years? Could it sit there for 10 years? Those are a lot of unpredictable things as well too in our situation. So trust me when I say we're trying to navigate through this as quickly as possible for everybody. And I know there's been a lot of things in the past, so we want to move forward going directly in the direction that's best for everybody. So I'm just trying to get a handle on all the deals because I'm the one picking up the phones every day answering these questions. So I appreciate your time, and Lon, again, thank you for your help and clarification on that for me, because I'm kind of dumbfounded when I get broadsided with these questions on this particular deal.
Well, that's why I wanted to give you the information. And
Absolutely,
I totally understand where you sit. I spent 2 terms on the city council.
Yep, absolutely.
I understand exactly what it takes to sit.
And there must be something on the street though, because I've never had my phone ring off the hook on a particular topic as this one. So
then I don't
again,
know who's
thank you.
stirring the pot, but basically somebody's stirring the pot. But the situation is, I mean, I'm standing here expecting him to be able to purchase that land with no strings attached, because that's our agreement. Had that not been the agreement, I would not have spent $700,000 that I just spent. I wouldn't have built there. And for you to change it now, it's just not right. I mean, I'm all in. My money's spent. Now all of a sudden the city's going, no, wait a minute. Hang on a minute on the other 2 acres. What? That's just not, I mean, the reason why I haven't purchased it is because you didn't want me to. Yeah, you wanted me to wait. Okay. So I've done nothing but be accommodating to the city.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Well, I guess my question is, that was a heck of a non-answer from you. I mean, you thanked me for bringing information, but you're looking at, you got to make a decision based on everybody's best interest. I guess I'd kind of like to know what the city council's thinking on this situation, because I had cleared my calendar to be here Thursday. I'm going to be out of town at the next council meeting, so I won't be able to be here to speak. So I'd like to know where your heads are at, because we can't do it this Thursday, because once again, and the public notice didn't get published properly.
What we'll have is we'll set the public hearing then for the first meeting in November, and then the revised purchase agreement would be included, and the council would have that for approval after the public hearing. As with any other sale, public hearing is required before the city council may proceed with the disposition of public property.
And actually, it's not the new agreement, it's the original agreement.
Sir, there was no signed agreement, so there's,
No,
so
you guys I had received one proposed by the city that I had signed and returned to the city.
Fine, but the city hasn't
And you
signed.
you changed it then.
But it wasn't signed by the city. It was
prepared by the
wasn't a
city
binding
attorney.
agreement. I mean, I'm not discounting anything you've just said, but you keep acting like there's a binding agreement on the
I guess
part
that's
of the
what
city.
I thought. I was told by your city manager that that's what the resolution of intent did. He told me that's what it did. He says, Jim, we have to pass a resolution of intent, then you get the other 2 acres once we get it all platted. I was told by the city that this is how the process goes. Now you're telling me, oh wait, there's no agreement? What? All I can do is come to the city and ask, how do we do this? And the city tells me how to do it, and I go, okay. And now you're telling me that that's not how it works.
We either want to sell the property or we don't. That's the way I look at it. And I can't think of anybody that's bought property that had a 3-year restriction on it that they had to do something with it. We got a realtor.
Basically, the 3-year restriction, for those that aren't here, it says in 3 years, if I don't develop, the city can give me the money back and take it away from me.
Right, we need to sell him, hey, the property's for sale, this is the price, 50,000 an acre. Or forget about it and say, I'm sorry, the property's not for sale, we need to.
Well, if that happens, then I'm gonna have to pursue some other action, because I've invested a whole lot of money on the prospectus that I was getting that property.
And our intent with this has not been to have the city be in the position of being a land developer. You know, we fronted a lot of cash out of the utilities to buy that ground down there off of 44th Street for future public services expansion. We got this one back from Fiberite, and you know, I think our intention was not to hold on to it any more than we had to, so that we could take the proceeds from the sales to replenish those enterprise funds so that they're not carrying artificially low fund balances. I mean, this is why the city doesn't get directly into the land development business. That's why we partner with organizations like the MEC to do these kinds of things. It simplifies things, you know. They're able to move a lot more nimbly than we are because of the public process that we have to go through for a land sale. And, you know, you're dealing with one individual rather than 7 different council members who may all have 7 different perspectives on what should happen. But, you know, my recommendation would be to go ahead and proceed with the sale. It's not doing the city any good to have it sitting there, because it's going to be non-taxable as long as it's in our ownership. So even the mere act of selling it is going to provide some taxable value, and then having it be developed later on, whether that happens in 1 year, 3 years, or 5 years, is going to create additional value that doesn't exist there today.
And it sounds like we wouldn't be here today talking about this if we, or the city, would not have wanted to hold off on the other 2 acres, because he was going to buy all 4 acres originally, but it was the city that said, hold on.
And I think that is the difference. I mean, I do see that, and I think that clears
And for further evidence, you can go back and reference your real estate contract with Skogan.
That clears it up for me.
Well, I'm answering his question. But Randy, you had mentioned, if for those ask, I'm following up on his comment. If you go back and reference the real estate agreement you have with Skogman Realty on that, I am listed as an excluded buyer because of the resolution of intent. Because the city had already committed me, selling me the land, so that land and me as a buyer is excluded even out of the Skogman contract that you have with Skogman Realty. I'm listed specifically. So I mean, the intent, what I'm saying is you have to answer to constituents. You can go back and pull documents from Clearback and say, look, this has been, we told him we're selling it to him, we put him on hold. I'm just giving you, you know, resources you can go reference to answer the citizens' questions.
And I appreciate it.
Yep. So I have copies of it if you'd like.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this?
You want to field number 3?
So as those of you who were on council a few years ago may remember, the city did enter into a 3-year contract with Vivere, who provides the comprehensive well-being services for the employee program. So there is no additional contract for this year because we are in our 3rd year, but we are reducing the amount by $6,000 because we are removing an online coaching component that we found was not being utilized by our employees. So the cost of the program this year will be reduced to just $13,800 from the $19,800 in the previous 2 years. Number 4 is just the program design for next year. We are not proposing any significant changes other than just some of the activities. So in terms of actual expenditures that the city would see, the incentives are still being offered at the same level as they were in the current year.
So they haven't changed anything for the staff for having to keep track of their more keeping track of their health or anything like that.
The program will remain unchanged from the prior year.
Okay. Will it get more severe? I guess that's maybe not the right word, but more input from the people that are using this to stay in the program?
Yeah, so we receive input from the departments every year, and we do have a committee that has representatives from every single department so that we can mold the specific employer-led activities in a way that would incent or encourage participation so that it's attractive for our employees. Did that answer your question, Joe?
Yeah, it did.
And to just clarify, while the program design might change, the specific activities that employees would do in a particular year might change. So, for example, if we have the ability to earn 450 points for different well-being activities, biometric screenings, and those types of things, there's basic stuff that would occur every year, but you would do different activities so it doesn't get stale because you're doing the same well-being activities year over year over year. But the basic design, the framework stays the same, but some of the specifics would get altered.
But it won't require every employee to do 30 push-ups next year.
And number 5, Prospect Meadows was not able to be here today. The banker that is involved with this, he and his wife apparently just had a baby, and so that takes priority over being able to come and make a formal request to the City Council. I will say that, as I noted in my memo, that we had a very positive meeting with the group in Enhance, Iowa about this project, and with everything moving forward, the next step would be for them to score the project formally. They won't do that until they know for sure that the funding is committed, even with conditions like the ones that were included in the bank's commitment letter. And then after that, the hope would be at their meeting in November that they will direct staff to start negotiating a contract, because that's the next big hurdle. There's a couple of other pieces of financing that really are contingent on that could make that project start to come together really quickly. That would put them on target for looking at breaking ground in the spring of 2017. And then
Did they send him a baseball glove for the banker?
I'm not sure. Number 6, this is something that Councilman Draper had asked be added back onto the agenda for further discussion. It was something that was considered and then tabled in the interests of the city actually adopting a naming policy, because we didn't have anything in place to do that. As proposed right now, the discussion would be about the naming of the entire police department in honor of our now retired Chief Harry Doherty. I know this is one of those cases where there's a lot of support for that, but we do also have to acknowledge that Harry was not universally beloved, no matter how much he might have wanted people to believe that he was. And so, I have heard some chirping about that from people who perhaps had some axes to grind with Harry in the past. So I have had some discussions with Harry about it as well. He's fine with having naming on the building or inside of the building rather than doing something big or something outside of it. But it really is up to the council about, what level do you want to go here? Are you comfortable moving forward with naming the entire facility? Do you want to do something inside of the building instead? That really is kind of the decision that needs to be made so that it's something that we could move forward with. I think Harry is honored to have either one happen as far as he's concerned. Just wanted to see where the city council really was sitting on this, and then any resolution that we would have on Thursday would just be crafted based on the wishes of the council.
Discussion.
I know there's a lot of discussion as to naming the building. I'm just going to be blunt and say I would be in favor of naming something inside the building. I don't think that and I'm going to include our fire department to be as well too, is to name a city building in its entirety to an individual. So no disrespect by that. I'm just simply saying my interest would be doing something in the building as opposed to the entire building.
Did you have something?
I was going to say the library is named after somebody.
That was someone who donated money to a fundraising campaign.
Still named after somebody, so
I personally also agree with Councilman Sternad. Nothing to do with the individual. It's just I don't think that a major public building should be named after an individual. I think we can honor the individual with something on the inside, in the lobby. Have as big as you want, a plaque or a wall or whatever it is, honoring him and his service. That would be my feeling on it.
I thought he already had something inside with his name on it.
I know there's several for officers that have retired. I don't recall seeing something in there. I mean, there was the desk that had his name on it, but he actually bought that from the city when he retired, and there's been a replacement one put in there.
I'm for the outside of the building.
You know, to me, and I've talked to Harry as well, we have a number of things named for people with their names on the outside of the property, whether it be a park or a library or whatever it might be. And I think a properly done sign on the outside of the building somewhere does have a result of honoring a person who certainly went through a period of time when our police department was in turmoil and was able to bring it about and bring it back. So I guess I would think of a proper sign on the outside of the building.
Anything else?
So that's something we'll just have to.
I just think that fundamentally, our police station should be the Marion Police Station. Just like the Marion City Hall and the Marion Fire Station. I don't think that those basic public facilities need to be named after an individual. I think you can honor an individual's service in a very nice way. On the inside of the building, you can name a portion of the building. You can name some function of the building for the individual. But to name the entire facility for an individual, I think has the prospect of confusing people. When people need to know that this is the Marion Police Station. That's my 2 cents on it. So, Joe, we haven't heard from you.
I guess I'm on the fence on it. I don't know which way I would like, but I know, like Paul, most of our parks have people's names associated with it, and they're still a Marion Park. So,
Your Honor, if we were to reach the motion as it's written, I would suggest that could be passed as it's written, and maybe we could get a committee together to decide it, because that doesn't say where it's going to be. A committee together to decide how we're going to make that honor.
But I'm fundamentally opposed to this resolution, personally.
Well, we'll vote that up or down then and see.
I'll throw in. I think it should be named Marion Police Department. I don't think it should be named the Harry or Dart. Yeah, the Law Enforcement Center. But like Nick said, you could do something inside in the lobby that maybe you call it that inside, but not actually. I don't know how I'm trying to explain what I'm thinking, because I'm torn on the thing too, like Joe said. I don't think there should be on the outside of the building for sure.
I think
it's in the lobby.
In addition to Marion Police Department, it's already on.
But then
that's already on
that
the building.
as a public safety measure, then that creates confusion. You have the XYZ Law Enforcement Center and the Marion Police Station. I think people need to know this is the Marion Police Station and not be looking for, this is the Law Enforcement Center. Is this the same thing as the police station? I don't think that you want to create that kind of confusion.
Do we have a library, and do we have the Nancy Miller Library?
That's a different thing.
No, it isn't. You know, we're going to disagree, Nick. I know that, and those who don't. But I'm just thinking we need to vote on it and decide. I think Harry has waited patiently, and I feel that I have too. I mean, if we don't want to do it, we're not going to do it. But the law enforcement center, you know, we have in the current building, and we've named portions of the building after. I think even at the old PD we had something named after Leighton Ford. I can't remember what it was, but there was one area. So, you know, I mean, part of the law enforcement center has a different meaning than the police department, I think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
I don't know why there's a big hurry on this. I think that we should seriously talk about it, maybe have a smaller group come up with some other ideas or something like that. I mean, we haven't, this is the only idea we've had, and we haven't been presented with alternatives or other ideas that for honoring Harry for his 40 years of service. I mean, he did a terrific job. He was doing his job. I think that we need to have other alternatives to consider. I know.
Rather than number 7, why don't we say we'll set up a committee instead of saying approving it? We'll approve setting up a committee to look at this and make a report back to council.
Yeah, if you want to do, rather than having a resolution on there, if you wanted to have a motion appointing a subcommittee to review and make recommendations for the naming, we can do that.
Think of that, Paul.
Well, my concern is I just don't, it's been hanging out there for months, and it's just, again, something that needs to get ticked off the list and brought to a resolution one way or another.
Well, you could do the resolution.
I'd be in favor then.
Okay.
Is that okay with you?
Sure.
I just think, yeah, that would be the thing that makes sense to me, is to know what the alternatives are. I mean, we've just been given one option. And I think if you want to honor someone, you ought to know what all the what other options there are.
So what will it say then, Lon? It'll be a resolution or a...
No, it'd be a motion to appoint a subcommittee to make recommendations for naming options on the police station.
Okay.
And then how would we go about forming that?
Normally those are mayoral appointments. So the mayor could appoint a couple members of the council. If you wanted to bring in a couple of people from the PD, we can do that as well.
I think having PD representatives.
Have it be 5 or 6. Yeah. I mean, obviously you've got some folks on the committee that have different opinions, so you'd want to get one of each for sure to make sure that it's balanced.
Well, it's kind of like your job, Lon. It's not the most popular job in the world. Or the mayor's.
And I don't think that in any of this discussion there's any question that, you know, Harry deserves to be honored and that he's, you know, done a great job and served the city well for 40 years. That's not even part of the discussion. It's just what kind of precedent are you setting, and what is the right thing to do, you know, regardless of the individual.
And then you can decide that.
Yeah.
And I would like to, even though it's not bolded, I'd like to talk a little bit about number 8, or benefit of the council. First off, I need to eat a little bit of crow on this one. We jumped the gun on the press release on it because the initial press release did not say that the contract had to come to City Council for approval, and that the job had been offered, it made it sound a lot more final than that, which is not what our policy allows for. So wanted to let you know that, yeah, that was mine. I missed that and should have made sure it was on there. The announcement on the website has that. But did want to kind of walk through the process for how this works and why it works the way that way it does. Marion is a little bit unique amongst cities in Iowa. Not all the cities in Iowa have to use the civil service process for naming department heads for the public safety divisions, but both police and fire have to go through the civil service process for hiring all the way up to the chief level. So it starts with the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission goes through and develops the criteria against which they're going to advertise and then test for the position of police chief as part of the vetting process, so that they then will ultimately provide a list to the city manager to make selections for individuals to draw in for interview. In this case, we hired a consultant to help with that process, help the advertising, help to make sure that the job description was up to date and that we were ready to move forward. So they handled the formal advertising part of it. The candidates that responded to that ad all had to go through the testing, and then the Civil Service Commission met, reviewed the results of those tests, and then forwarded a list of 10 individuals over to me for review and to make the interview selection. Initially, we had picked 5, 1 withdrew, so that left us with 4 candidates. We had a multifaceted process for gathering input into the final decision for who to hire. It started off with all the candidates having the opportunity to tour the community. Our 2 local candidates both know Marion very well and elected not to do that, so it was the external candidates. We ended up with a tour of the police department, and each candidate had 15 or 20 minutes to actually meet with the officers out there so that we could collect and gather feedback from the officers on what their impressions of the different candidates were. Then we also had the public open house, and again, individual members of the public were invited to provide feedback and their opinions on what they thought of the different individuals. Coming into Saturday, we then had 4 different interview panels, all of which had a little bit of a different flavor to it. There was one, for example, that had the police chief from Cedar Rapids and Sheriff Gardner on it, along with a local officer. So you had a kind of a law enforcement group, emergency management group. Then you'd had one that would be maybe public administration, one that involved civilian employees. The Civil Service Commission members were also involved in the interviews. And we went through and did round-robin interviews with all 4 candidates. At the end of that, everybody did a blind vote. So everybody ranked their top candidates 1 through 4 before any discussion was had about impressions, what people thought of them or not. And then we came together as a large group, held the group discussion, and then took another vote. The reason that I like to do that is because the first vote is based on initial impressions, and if there's not a clear consensus on the candidates, then that's part of what you look at to see, are there things or questions that people need to have answered during the discussion. And then you look at the second vote and see if there's a clear consensus candidate or not. The other thing it tells you is that if, for example, if the first vote has maybe 2 people ranked 1 and 2, and then that switches after the discussion, that means you need to do a second round of interviews because there's not clear, overwhelming support for one particular candidate. And in this case, with the offer being made to Mr. McHale to be the next chief, at every step, he was the consensus #1 candidate. It has nothing to do with the qualifications of our internal candidates. They were both fine candidates, very well qualified. They interviewed very well, but it was very apparent in looking at the feedback from the department, from the public, from the open house, and from both votes that were taken by the panel. He made a heck of an impression on our community and a heck of an impression on everybody that he came across. And so, the code says that the Marion's policy is that it's my decision on who to hire. That's why it's set out that way. But I wanted to make sure that we used a very robust process that got a lot of different sets of eyes on that, just to make sure that it wasn't just me making that selection. So if it had been somebody different, I would have again just looked at the feedback and wishes of the community and made that offer. But the next step then is for the council to approve the contract. In this case, when you're using a recruiter, the recruiter does some of the legwork on negotiating the details in the contract, and then I'm involved with it, and then finally it undergoes legal review and then comes to the city council for approval. So I'd say, the one thing that was that happened for it is that when the initial reports came out, it did make it sound like it was a done deal. It was not a done deal, but this isn't a situation where the city council actually does the active hiring of that individual. Marion is a city manager city, and while I know there are certain people that are not my fans that don't like it, the responsibility for hiring and firing and the consequences of whether you make a good decision or a bad decision fall on my shoulders. The city council hires me to make those decisions, and if you don't like the decisions that I make, well, then it generally occurs to the city council that perhaps there should be a different city manager, but that's how the system works. So I wanted to see if there were any questions or concerns about it.
I would like to, if I could, I was asked by the Civil Service Commission, because I served there for 28 years, to be part of this. And I went to the series of meetings when they chose a search firm. I was there not in voting when we went from 40-some and reviewed every application and down, including the meetings we had that Lon's talking about in smaller groups here. It had a high-class, highly intelligent group, I thought, especially we sat around that table down there and reviewed where we were. Sure. Would we like to have seen us hire somebody from our department? Yeah. But the thing we got to remember is that we unquestionably, the person who we've offered the job to is unquestionably probably overqualified. He's a very qualified individual. I think we should be proud as a city when we went on a nationwide search and ended up with 2 of them from our department. I think that's a great sense of pride for us, and I hope that's a sense of pride for them, and that we can keep our level out there good, and I think we can, knowing the people, the 2 involved, that are, both of them, when they were interviewed, indicated this is their home and they're staying here, and hopefully that'll be the case. I can remember on civil service when we hired 3 chiefs in 5 years, and it didn't work out very well, and in those days, the mayor is the one who went through the final numbers and chose the chief. And after 3 failures in a row, Vic said, Jeff, why don't you do this from now on? I don't want to do it. So I think it was a well thought out, well organized, and well done. The whole process was done very wisely. And again, congratulate our guys for being on the list, guys, because that's a heck of an accomplishment.
I know I've shared it with Lon, but when I met Mr. McHale, I walked up to him to shake his hand, and he said to me, "Oh, Mr. Spinks, how are you?" before he even said my name. And he said, "I see you worked at Rockwell for 36 years." And, I mean, he knew all about me off of that. And then I said to Will, I said, "Go over and say hi to him and don't tell him your name." And he did you the same thing.
He probably did a background on you. I'd like to see that, Joe.
Yeah. I'll probably get another call from the DSI guys, or why is somebody else investigating you?
Yeah, he knew what I did for a living. He knew my name. He knew who I was, and I was, T-shirt and shorts that day, so not shaved.
It was actually a very similar process that we used when we hired for the fire chief position. It was a slightly smaller interview panel, but the same general type of format. I'd say with this time around, I really have to give a lot of credit to Leanne in finance and to Jen Kettleson for helping to coordinate the process, because we didn't have Jen before and Leanne wasn't handling civil service, and I did most of it that first time around, and I was very glad that somebody else handled it this time around.
I want to echo the same thing. I just want to put another kudos out to our local gentleman that applied. So we got some phenomenal individuals out there at the department. A lot of them have some future, wonderful future, opportunities for future, and hopefully it's with our department. Just one spin-off to that, I would like to ask, I'm a little confused. Who is still our interim chief? The question came to me at our last Wednesday in the ward. The announcement was that Mr. Elam was our interim. So can you clarify for the council who is our interim?
Yeah, Mr. Elam is our current interim chief.
Okay.
Per the civil service rules, you can only appoint someone to an acting capacity for 90 days, and then you can't appoint that same person back in for 90 days. So while it was Captain Slagle for the first 90 days, we couldn't reappoint him to fill that out. I did ask Beth to make sure with Mr. McHale's start date, and Scott will be able to fill out that entire term, so we won't have to look at a third appointment prior to Mr. McHale coming on board, assuming the council votes in the affirmative on Thursday.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that, because I didn't know.
Okay. Thank you.